All right, Kingkillers, we're covering chapters 30 through 36 on this episode. We're going to watch Kvothe finally snap back to his senses and proceed to make Tarbean his bitch. He tries to sell us on cloaks, but sounds more like a dork wearing fingerless gloves. And he wisely passes on a devil's three-way, but foolishly settles in the friend zone. Then we're going to discuss Rothfuss and his clearly frequent trips to strip clubs, and we talk about all the Dennas in our lives. Finally, we're going to get to the university where we hear a story about a bridge. And then we meet that motherfucker Hemme. Fuck that dude. Fuck that dude. Alright, sit back and enjoy.
What is up, killers? Welcome back to the Utmost Killer broadcast, Kingkiller podcast. Tonight we got back with us Fanny Pack Dan and Pimply Tim the Simpleton, Pimpled Simple Tim, Tim the Simp, or simply Wimpy Timmy, as he's known in his more familiar circles. So say hello, gentlemen.
What's going on, man?
Hello.
Tim the
Quite an
Simp.
introduction.
And
Tim the
Quite-
Simp. That's
quite
what,
an
that's
introduction.
what he's always been known as.
Yeah,
Tim the
yeah.
Simp.
yeah, I mean, that's why it rolls off the tongue so easy. We've been calling him that for years. But they've been calling me the exquisite podcaster Master Fitz. So that's me. And let's dig right in, guys. Tonight we're going to be going away from leaving the shithole Tarbean as we start off with chapter 30, The Broken Binding. So at this point, Kvothe, after having been awoken by Scarpy calling his name, he decides to leave Tarbean and go to the university. And in order to get the funds to do this, he needs to sell his book, Rhetoric and Logic. So that's the book Abinthy gave him. And he bargains with the owner of a Barnes & Noble to get 2 silver talents out of that. So then it goes right into chapter 31, the nature of nobility. So at this point, with the money he gets, Kvothe goes and he buys a purse, a man's purse, and breakfast. And he gets a bath at the Bed Bath & Beyond that he ate breakfast at, and in exchange for washing the hearth and a promise to do the dishes after. But Kvothe does a little bath and dash and sneaks out after the bath in just his towel, and he goes and finds a J.C. Penney. And with his new fine clothes, he goes and finds some new fine clothes by pretending to be a noble's son who has just been robbed by a whore. After buying these new clothes, Kvothe returns to the tavern and he pays the innkeeper the penny that he promised, or instead of doing the dishes. What do you guys think?
It's kind of cool. Like they title the chapter 30 "The Broken Binding," because obviously I think that's probably the name of the bookstore, but also the broken binding could be that like the binding, whatever's been like holding him back from being himself has broken. So it's kind of got a little bit of a double meaning to the chapter title.
I hadn't picked up on that.
But I mean, there's not a ton to say like on the chapter, like as far as like what to look into. It's just a great chapter as far as just reading it. It's just entertaining to read. Like he's finally back to himself. He's finally got his wits about him, and his his intellect is coming to the forefront again. You see that with when the guy tries to swindle him with the receipt, saying, gives him a receipt that says, "I, by signing below, hereby attest to the fact that I can neither read nor write." And so he just writes that D on it and then goes through, and it's like, what's the D stand for? Defeasance. It means to render something null and void, usually a contract. The second D is for decrepitate, which is the act of throwing someone into a fire. Gave me a blank look. Decrepitation is the punishment for forgery and June Pui. I think false receipts fall in that category. So it's fun to see him back, at some semblance of himself again. after so long where we don't see him like that.
Yeah, the things that I found most revealed about Kvothe here is his haggling, his ingenuity is back, his cleverness is back, his ability to take control. Like the DD is a great example of that. But there are a couple things that I did think Rothfuss he went a little further. We've gotten some semblances of how their time works, their days and months. There's kind of a reference where he talks about, like, they say Orden the 38th, or the 38th of the month. So we get little, you know how we talked about info dumps. He's doing some little poops here with the like the days of the week, and then also with money. So we get some differences in pennies versus talents versus jots. I think are mentioned as well. So we're kind of getting those little. He's delving a little bit further into those pieces of the world with the world building and just peppering him in a clever way, because again, the back and forth in the chapter is great. It's just easy to read through. It's quite enjoyable, but then you're still getting these little pieces of information that give you more depth in the world and more depth into Kvothe. The DD too, I liked because it gives you more feeling of a depth of understanding of how world-wise Kvothe is. You know what I mean? So now he's got some knowledge of what kind of law is this? Bird law. It's not bird law, but it's
bird law. Yeah, it's basically pulling a Charlie. And It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's bird law on him. Pulled some bird law. June Pui's known for their bird law. He it shows his, how well read he is, his vocabulary. I mean, he's obviously, we know he's very intelligent, but he's able to demonstrate that with his vocabulary, and we haven't seen him like this for so long, so it definitely stands out.
Well, I think especially a good, sorry, I just want to mention a good representation of like his backbone coming back is just the line, "I'll need a receipt." Because they're kind of going back and forth, and the guy's like, "This isn't a pawn shop, but you're going to get what I give you." And then he's like, they do a little negotiation, and then once he says, "I'll need a receipt," it kind of sets this tone. Where then the guy's looking at him, he's judging him for what he looks like, because he looks like shit. He looks like a bum. And then, they have their back and forth, which is cool. But what are you going to say, Fitz?
How excited it makes you as you're reading through for Kvothe to be back. He's finally got his wits. He's finally, not being a push. I mean, I guess he wasn't a pushover, but pushover enough to be living on the streets. As we read about Kvothe up to this point, prior to Tarbean, everything is so quick-witted and seemed like he should have been able to quickly find a way out of this. But, as we've talked about, he's not quite himself. And so it's great to see him back. It's great to see Kvothe with some intelligence and wit again and finding a way to get out of there.
Yeah, and it ends on a pretty funny note with the guy smiled in an apologetic way. "Sorry about the note, but you didn't look like you'd be coming back." Gave a little shrug. "Here." He pressed a copper jot into my hand. I decided that he was not altogether a bad fellow. I smiled back at him, and for a second I almost felt guilty about how I'd written the receipt. I also felt guilty about the 3 pence I'd stolen, but only for a second, and since there was no convenient way to give them back, I stole a bottle of ink before I left. I'm like, so.
Yeah, we definitely get a piece of Kvothe's, like, his humanity, because he's like, oh, this guy's not such a bad guy, but he's still shrewd. Like, you definitely see his shrewdness in this chapter for sure. But so one thing I was wondering if it's worth going over. Do we want to touch on like the days and the months? I mean,
you get them fed to you in drips and drabs. Like, so I think by the end of 2 books, you could probably go through and name every day of a month. You could probably I'm sure that stuff's online. I haven't really, like, that's not something I've dove into, but yeah, I mean, it's there. I'm sure, you could pull up online and they can match it, because he does, he gives a handful of them in this chapter, obviously, but I mean, he does it throughout the books where he gives some names to it. I don't know that there's any anything like significant to it other than, gives, for people who want to really, understand the world and how it works, that information's in there for you. So you can get down to what every day is titled. You can go in to figure out that a month is 4 spans. The spans 11 days, so a month's 44 days. There's eight months in a year. Plus there's the 7 days of the winter festival. So, a year's 359 days, I believe. So you get all that information's in there. So like anybody who's really, they want to know how the currency works, they want to know how the calendar works, like all that stuff is presented in these books.
I mean, I guess if you think about it, I mean, even in our world, Monday through Sundays, there's not a lot of significance to the days. Although, like a couple things that I found here, people are a little more drunk on hepton, a little more generous on morning. That to me is like Saturday, Sunday. You know what I mean? Because Saturday people are partying, Sunday they all feel guilty for what they did the day before. Or it's a holy day, I guess, would mark the morning. But yeah, there's significance to that work week, I guess you could say. But obviously there's a different world in so many ways. So, but yeah, he peppers it in here. That's the only reason I thought maybe it'd be worth bringing up.
Then we move into with chapter 31, which is really great because this is where he really gets rolling, and he goes into Waterside, goes into the inn, gets a good meal for the first time in forever. You got everybody staring at him because he's wearing a burlap sack for a shirt. He's basically like took a potato sack and cut holes in it for arms. That's his clothes he's wearing. So he stinks. He's just he's been living in basically the gutters for 3 years now, and so he gets
his pants. His pants are 2 sizes too big, held up with a rope that he got out of the trash.
Yeah, so I mean, like if you picture, he's sitting at like an Applebee's, and like the dirtiest bum comes and pops in, sits at a table. He's gonna make a scene.
Well, it's interesting because we know his life's been rough and he's barely getting by, but we don't hear that much about, like, obviously he'd be cognizant of how he smells and looks because he's surrounded by people that now are gonna recognize this and be like, what the hell is this bum doing in here? Yeah. So he's cognizant of it, and then it makes sense that we would have it pointed out to us. But
and then he gets that bath, and he looks in the mirror and notices that he's older. Who knows what the last time he's looked in a mirror, especially now, like cleaned and not looking super grubby, and he realizes, shit, I'm fucking looking old and I'm looking good. Like I got fucking smooth jawline, fucking looking like a noble. And he runs with that, and once he kind of sees himself, starts thinking of himself as a noble, starts thinking about like, well, only thing I'm missing is clothes. And what's great about this chapter is it gives us it prepares us for Ambrose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is what this ultimately does, because he
says he reminds him of a noble's son that he played in a play, right?
Yeah, he when he looks at his reflection, he just thinks he looks like a noble, but then when he goes out and he utilizes that information, like, I look like a noble, so I might as well act like a noble, and he just acts like a total shit, goes running over to some people wearing a towel and like snapping at him like, hey, stupid, tell me where I can get some clothes, you morons.
Yeah, that was great. It's great because they mention a couple details where it's like he gave his head a specific tilt and set his shoulders differently, and made a couple mental adjustments. But we get to see that. We don't really know exactly what he did, but we see like, okay, so he's doing something, and then the stuff he did to the people on the streets, fantastic.
Yeah,
he just dresses everybody down like a complete piece of shit. He's an asshole.
Yeah, and I can like picture him like setting his shoulders back, standing up a little straight, little fucking proud like a little peacock, and
his nose up.
Yeah, and just thinking, he's walking around in a fucking towel, but
in the middle of the
I can
street in a
picture
towel.
him like, I can picture him like given a perception of like, I'm too good for you, even though I'm walking around with no clothes on.
It's pretty great. I mean, talk about owning it.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes the opposite direction of where someone should be in that circumstance, where they're like embarrassed and they're kind of rushing around, whatever. He's he's just yelling at people to help him.
Yeah.
Where do I get clothes?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And then he goes in, and we really get the, this is how you're supposed to act with a noble. He goes in and whatever the noble Dunsty is, the insufferably petulant little boy with an important father, and he goes and plays that role with the guy selling clothes and just rips him a new asshole right off the bat, screaming at him, I'll tear this place apart if you don't, serve my needs. And that guy jumps right to it. And, it's it's hard to imagine like going into a store and scream, do you know who I am?
He screams at him to get a robe. And as he goes and gets him the robe, this lady who's a customer in there, she like hurries out, and before she leaves, she curtsies. Like, she's scared of him. She don't even know who he is.
Yeah, so you get that sense of the world, like people bow down to these nobles. They're not gonna. They're gonna try to just grin and bear it. Get it over with. This guy's a prick. Everybody knows he's a prick. No one wants to deal with him, but you have to. You just put your head down, you grin and bear it, and get it over with. And that's what they do. That is not ever what Kvothe does.
Well, it's so great, too, because of the way he describes it, that nobles' sons are one of nature's great destructive forces, like floods or tornadoes. When you're struck with one of these catastrophes, the only thing an average man can do is grit his teeth and try to minimize the damage.
Yeah,
Bentley knew this, and boom, boom, boom. And dude, it's great. It's like, they're like a hurricane.
Yeah,
it sucks. We got to deal with this now. Let's just grin and bear it and get him out of here.
Yeah, and that's exactly how Ambrose is, and how most people treat Ambrose and react to Ambrose. But that's what I love about Kvothe is he knows it. He shows you it. He shows you explicitly why people react the way. He shows you how they react. And then when he is put in that same position where he's dealing with a prick noble son, he just ignores everything he knows as far as how you're supposed to act to him. And he just runs straight into the fire and doesn't think twice about it.
It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you want, people like that. And I mean, you consider being in a situation where there's a dude in the town that acts like Ambrose, and then this guy, let's pretend you're at the university and you're around this dude all the time. You're like, God, I fucking hate this prick, but you can't do anything. And then this guy comes in and is willing to shit all over him in public in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I'd love this dude. I'd be like, this is the guy, man. Close to shit.
I'll go back to what I always say, Tim, is he just, as much as this sounds like the absolute worst situation or world to live in with these pricks, like I have a problem with authority, so I wouldn't last long. But as Kvothe, talks shit to Ambrose and knowing who he is continually does what he does to him, I'm still always just like, come on, Kvothe, just leave it alone. But yeah, it's like you said, it makes me happy on one side, and then the duality is, you want Kvothe to succeed, and it doesn't seem like he's going to if he keeps messing with Ambrose. But
yeah, that's the thing. He's can't help himself, and he can because he knows. I mean, we've talked about this many times. He knows better. He knows he shouldn't do it. He knows what he should do. What would be the easiest way to get along? But he can't do it.
Yeah, and
which is Sims talked about. He always does what's right.
And it's funny to witness because I mean he goes so far as to like talk about like Ambrose having like discharge and like he's got like gonorrhea or something. Like, I mean, he doesn't just like toe the line. He jumps straight over the line and goes
He thrashes
straight at these dudes.
Dude, he popularized a song about him.
Yeah. Pizzle's sure to fizzle.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's
Ambrose jackass.
it's great. I mean, the guy's such a prick. I mean, it would be less entertaining if everybody was just bowing and scraping to this dude. So it's you want to see it, but you see it and you like it, but then you also know like that's gonna surely come back to bite him in the ass. Like Ambrose is a vicious fucking monster. He's going to get his revenge. But this is the chapter that gives you that that understanding of this world and nobles. And you also get with when he talks about like he gives him the story to just kind of make because Kvothe still even when he's in that situation he's being a prick, he tries to at least give the guy a story and tries to subtly make it a less awful experience for the guy. So he gives him the story about getting robbed by a whore, and then he gives a little nugget of I looked thoughtful for a second, then spoke softly as if thinking aloud. It only follows that a gentleman's dignity is in his purse then. I looked at the purse in my hands and gave a long pause. I think I heard my father say something of that sort the other day. Which is funny because when he goes and he's trying to get Denna's ring back and he's trying to burn the mommet that Ambrose created of him, he bumps into Ambrose as he's leaving the room and picks his pocket. And even he thinks at that moment, he thinks back to himself as Dunsty and his little improv line about a gentleman always keeps his purse on it, close to his vest. And that's exactly what Ambrose does as well.
Well, I like what you were mentioning a minute ago, how this does also reveal Kvothe's humanity, because there is that balance where it's one thing to like tear this guy's place apart and act like a prick because you're going to get what you need, and he's doing it and he's doing it successfully. But yeah, that like when he notices the shopkeeper suppressing a laugh, and it actually makes him feel better because he's like, well, at least he's getting something out of this. It's not me trotting all over him and making this whole thing awful for him. That's a really important little touch because it does make him still decent and humane to us.
Yeah, he definitely threads the needle. On that one.
Then again, he talks the guy down from
he still rips him off.
Way talks him way down from.
But he needs the money. That's the thing. He needs the money for his tuition.
Hey,
because he doesn't know what it's going to be. So
it's a good negotiator.
He's still shrewd with the money. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But
then he obviously then he goes back to the bar. Only other thing I had on this chapter was when he's in the bar and he's looking around. He's like, I've always had a fondness for taverns. He comes from growing up on the road, I think. A tavern is a safe place, a refuge of sorts. I felt very comfortable just then, and it occurred to me that it wouldn't be a bad life owning a place like this, which, obviously knowing what we do, that's, exactly what ends up happening to him, is that's the life he goes and tries to hide away in, although it doesn't seem to please him as much as he thought in that moment.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but him going back to that tavern with the intention of washing the dishes. I think that also speaks to the moral hero that Kvothe is.
Yeah, and he left some stuff there. He had to get his stuff back too. But yeah, he was
right. But he was
still gonna. Yeah, he was still gonna complete his deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely speaks to his character. It's also he still hasn't left who he was, because he's like, well, I can't, pass up a chance to make some money real quick. He still can't, he's not out of that person yet. This opportunity to get some money just for a few hours work, should do this. Until he looks at his hands and he's like, yeah, I don't want to go into this shit. He's got a belly full of food. He's got nice clothes.
Yeah, and then the guy ends up giving him the penny back anyways. For the compliment, he gives him some compliment, but I'd be lucky to own a place half this good or something like that. And the guy gives him a penny back, and it's like, compliments like that, you're welcome anytime or something along those lines.
Yeah, we are slowly getting these moments of people being decent to him. Like he's having these interactions where, these are actually good moments, which obviously is helping us move in this direction out of the Tarbean, shithole of existence to a more positive life path.
Yeah, for sure. You obviously you get the dark side of Tarbean, but not everything. Not everybody there obviously is a dirtbag. It's just the life he was in and who he was surrounded by. Because obviously you got Trappists and you got, there's business owners and the lady that gives him the silver penny, and then the and Canis, the Garrick or whatever his name was, Garrett, that gives him the silver talent that's dressed up as Canis. So there's decent people there, but this guy's just not himself, and he's living in the gutters, and he's not utilizing his talents, and so he's put himself in a position where he's going to mostly run into the worst of that world.
And he's only a 12-year-old kid when he gets thrown into it. So, how well do you know the ways of the world to go out and find ways to make a decent living or something to that effect?
Well, he knew sympathy. He could have been, even if it was just he was a performer. He could have been doing a lot with acting, with sympathy, with magic, that kind of stuff. He could have been a street performer and living a good life.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But he
was behind those doors.
Yeah, he was so locked behind those doors that, like, just even simple things, even if you're going to choose that lifestyle, he wasn't even making the best out of that lifestyle. He was like just scraping by and not utilizing anything that would have made it better. So, of course, if that's your mind state and that's what's going on, yeah, then you're more likely going to run into the worst of the city. And he definitely does.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you're right about that. I mean, he could have done well as a street performer.
Yeah.
He's got all kinds of skills, man.
Yeah. Could have been way easier life. Yeah. He's a great singer, performer. Yeah. Could have went into a tavern, juggler. picked up a lute, started playing it, and then someone would have been like, "Yo, you need to be singing for my establishment. I will give you food and a place to sleep." Just, it's not the same. I mean, we see it. Like, once he heard both the Scarpy stories and he decided, I need to get to the university, he was out of there on his way to the university in a day, and he was successful in getting out. Like, it wasn't an issue. He ran that city like it was nothing.
Hey, Dan,
it's definitely impressive, man.
Something that we touched on a little bit last episode, but do you think it was a progressive change that Kvothe made over the two stories, or do you think it was more as soon as Scarpy said his real name, did he just become Kvothe?
It seemed like a slight progression with like a big jump, like where it was like he heard about Scarpy telling stories, and then he started to think about the story. What story would I ask for? And that kind of woke up a little part of him. And then he heard the story, and then he took him a minute to kind of figure out that Lanre is Haliax. And then when he remembered that made another jump.
Welcome.
Then once he heard the second story and Scarpy named him, or some aspect of hearing that second story, whether he got named or there's something else to it, that's when, like, he went and opened all the doors of his mind, bawled for a while, got himself back together, decided, I'm going to university. There was a major difference after he left the tavern the second time and went up onto the rooftops. There was a dramatic difference in who he is. And he's not even fully awake at this point until in a couple chapters when he plays his music, and that's when it kind of fully snaps into place for him. But he's mostly back to himself by this point.
Okay, so chapter 32 is called Coppers, Cobblers, and Crowds, and Kvothe is headed up to Hillside to buy a pair of shoes. but he's a little uneasy while he's walking, and he keeps ducking into alleys, and he can't figure out what's making him uneasy. He comes to realize that it's because he's walking with a crowd and not through a crowd or against a crowd. So he gets up on hillside and he finds a shoe store. He ends up buying a pair of used shoes from a guy for 2 coppers. He then goes and he finds a group of travelers who seem like maybe they're selling some goods and heading up to Imre. And Kvothe talks to the guy and they make plans to head up. He makes plans to head up with them to Imre. But before he does, he goes back down into Trappist's basement, and he finds a different dynamic there because he's the rich kid. And as soon as he walks in, some kid tries to pick his pocket. And anyway, but Trappist recognizes him right away, and he wishes him well and says he's happy for him, and they say their goodbyes.
That part where he's got that nerve-wracking moment where he keeps feeling like someone's watching him, keeps ducking into an alley, trying to figure out what it is. And he finally figures out, and you get the great line, "Fear tends to come from ignorance. Once I knew what the problem was, it was just a problem, nothing to fear." But like, it just kind of shows you how out of sorts he was, that just the act of walking down the street was bringing up a fear in him where he kept ducking into alleys, looking over his shoulder, trying to figure out who was following him. Just the act of walking down a street was a problem for him.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like over the entirety of the chapter, there's this dichotomy within him. And you could even say it's like, he starts out with he's clean, he's wearing clean clothes, but he doesn't have any shoes on. So he's kind of like, even his body, in a sense, is at odds with itself. He goes into Trappist's basement, and he has belonged there for so long. Now he doesn't. He's on the street, which he's been walking on these streets forever, but now he's walking in a crowd. So it's like he belongs, but then he doesn't. So it's like it's perfectly placed too, because of where we're at in the story. He's in this transitional phase where he's made this move where, again, he looks like he can pass, but again, he's not wearing shoes. So there's this weird, I don't know, I just see that as pretty a significant thing. And I like that they literally start the chapter with that he steps out, and he mentions the sun was out and the cobblestones were warm beneath my feet. So it just reminds us immediately of that sense. But, he's got a full belly, clean body, like he feels good, but then he's got this unease, and it lasts throughout. And he's got that panic moment with Trappist, which is pretty, it's kind of intense, right?
Obviously, he's like the idea that Trappist, the one guy who's kind of been helping to take care of him, like just the idea that this guy wouldn't know who he is anymore terrified him. Just that thought was hard for him to imagine. And then obviously Trappist immediately knows who he is without even barely looking at him. Doesn't even see, that he's all cleaned up and in new clothes and looking new and spiffy. Like Trappist doesn't see him like that at all. Just sees the kid.
Yeah, I guess that's really interesting, because I skipped that part, and in my own mind this time, because that was after he already got the shoes. So once he goes down there, he now has these shoes on, and they even point that out as he walks down there. It felt weird to walk down. It felt strange to make the trip wearing shoes. So yeah, he's kind of, I don't want to keep harping on his feet being shodden or not, but it's kind of interesting that the transition through the chapter, to me, is pretty interesting. Plus, now we know he's leaving. He knows he's leaving.
Yeah, and I mean, he
something
sees.
That was.
Go ahead.
I was going to go back to the shoemaker or shoe salesman. Just how interesting it was how he described the different types of people and their feet. He talked about how some people who would come in, having really nice shoes, and as soon as they take them off, they have terrible smelly feet. And these are the people that hide secrets. And he goes on to talk about Kvothe's feet and scarred up and calloused, and that's exactly what Kvothe is while he's in Tarbean. He's a calloused little kid and seen a lot that's really changed him.
Yeah, it's cool for this cobbler to notice it, to recognize it, and then to do him a solid by giving him shoes for free. It's pretty cool. And then Kvothe, again, this sort of touch of I guess humanity, if you want to call it that, where he actually still gives him money, or places it on his bench his stool or whatever as he walks out.
Yeah, and
calls it. What does he say? It was the right thing. He said pride had something to do with it, but then pride is a strange thing, but mostly because it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah,
and that is reason enough.
Yeah, and you also get in that part the cobbler, he gives him the old shoes and like, I don't sell old shoes, and then just turns around and he starts like whistling or humming "Leave the Town Tinker." Which that's the first mention we get of "Leave the Town Tinker," but that song is mentioned a ton, and it's usually mentioned when Kvothe is in a situation where he's not even consciously thinking of it. He just finds himself playing it. Like, I'll give you an example. When he's at the Mayor Alvaron's estate, and the mayor, he has just told the mayor that the Kvothe is poisoning him. So he gives him the medicine and he tells him, hey, it's going to be a rough night. And then Kvothe is in his room by himself and he's thinking like, shit, this guy might not survive. And he's like, and if he dies, they're going to think I poisoned him. And so when he doesn't hear back the next day immediately, he's sitting there playing his music and getting a little nervous. And then he finds himself playing "Leave the Town Tinker." And like, there's these moments where usually when he's playing like "Leave the Town Tinker," it's in these moments where his subconscious is telling him, dude, get the fuck out of there. And so you get that first little introduction of that song, which comes up a number of times. He also plays it with Devi. It comes up a number of times as we go along, but that's the first time we get mention of it.
So first, speaking of first times, because I didn't mention it in the summary, when Kvothe goes up, and I don't know what you'd call these people. He said it's the third group of travelers or people that he asked to hitch a ride with. But anyway, when he meets Roland and Rita, and they're the people who are going to take him to Imre, he also meets Denna for the first time.
Yeah,
he gets first glimpse of her.
I think this is the first time we hear about the Sealdish accent. I only mention it because it's so prevalent throughout the books.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't.
Roland,
I don't remember it being
Roland speaks Sealdish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually Rowan, but he described it as an angry rock slide. There's something about how he describes Sealdish where I feel like the Russian.
Yeah,
I feel like the language sounds Russian. He described as ruddy skin.
They're obviously black, but. Okay, yeah, it sounds like at least the accent that we are presented on Audible, the accent that guy gives, it sounds like a Russian, but a black Russian. A black Russian.
I thought it was when I read before I ever heard the Audible, but then I never thought they were black.
Yeah, they're black.
I heard you mention that with 100% certainty, but when someone says ruddy skin, that's like reddish.
No, they're black.
That's
they're
like
black.
That's like pale skin and they color reddish.
People have asked Rothfuss, and yeah, it's 100%. They're definitely black. Like they're like people have asked Rothfuss.
Never caught that.
Like would Willem and Kilvin be played by black characters? And he's like, yeah, 100%. So like the Sealdish are, at least darker skin, darker skin characters. They're not. It
always
white
sound
people.
like dark hair. Whatever. Doesn't matter. I don't see color.
Yeah,
okay?
You were wrong. You were wrong.
Well, it's when I hear ruddy skin, that's like typically
like Scottish.
Fair skin. Yeah, fair skinned you turn red. Your cheeks get red. But whatever. Again, I don't see color, bro. So
yeah,
whatever. But yeah, no. So all right. So Denna, the more important thing here. I think the way he describes her is great. because it's sparing. It's a sparse description. It's basically a few details, and then she's beautiful, which I think is very intelligent for a writer, because it leaves to the mind of the reader what would she look like.
Yep. All he says is dark hair, and, well, she's beautiful.
We hear about her
Very
jawline a little bit later, but in this introduction, we get more about like her how she can be seen in certain lights as she's becoming a woman, but she still has these childlike sort of tendencies. Kind of what people like to see in an individual, which is like she has this joyous aspect to her, but she can also be she's also at that age where it sounds like could be looked at as an adult, or she's like coming out of adolescence, maybe.
Yeah, Kvothe actually explains it as she seemed to be a year older than him, possibly, maybe more, and then goes on to say that she was dressed for the road in basically a pair of jeans or a pair of pants and a shirt. But if she was any older, he would have had to look at her like a lady, and I think that also means that she probably would have had to dress more like a lady. But the fact that she's wearing, the pants and the shirt alludes to her. She's still a girl, not a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to an extent, like, because she's, in his mind, she's about a year older than him or so in that 16-year-old range. But we know that the guys at the Ilolian, one of the owners, like, it's not Stanchion, the other Diak, whatever his name is, he knows Denna, and he's, at the time that Kvothe talks to him about it, he's known her for a little more than a year. She's already been doing this role as, what's the high society prostitute? I'm drawing a blank on the name. Courtesan, yeah. She's kind of doing this courtesan role. And so he's known her for about a year as doing that. So she could be a little older than he thinks. And also we know, like, when Kvothe sees her at the Ilolian, it's basically like half a year later. And when he sees her, or maybe like 6 months in their time frame, so maybe a little longer than a half year, but something in that range, she seems older. She seems like a woman to him when he sees her dressed up in nice clothing and that kind of shit. So it could be a function of, her wearing like men's clothing and riding clothing and just not being, fully done up like a woman, just being dressed down and shit. So it's tough to gauge how old she actually is.
When you say it was that long after, it seems so much longer to me. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's not that long, because, I mean, he doesn't go, it's not like he goes like a super long time before he gets his loot.
Well, so much happens. So much happens in that span of time, These kids grow up fast, man. They grow up fast.
Yeah.
They sure do.
Or as he says, the boy grows upward, but the girl grows up. Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah. Our little Denna out there prostituting herself. She's so grown up.
Yeah.
What was it? Hooer?
Is it hooer?
Is it not instead of hooer?
Hooer.
Instead of courtesan?
A hooer.
That's like
speaking of that.
In one.
Speaking of the tall have a saying about children of our age: the boys grow upward, but the girls grow up. I was going to bring up the tall in last episode, but I held off because, we're obviously, covered enough. But I think the tall might be the singers that they mention when they talk about the Chandrian fear, the singers, the scythe, and the Amir. Like, who keeps you safe from the singers, scythe, and Amir? I think the tall might be the singers. So we get.
Now, what are you talking about, Dan? You say the tall.
Yeah, so like they say, like in that little part right there, they say the tall, T-H-A-L, T-A-H-L. The tall have a saying about children of our age. The boy grows upward, but the girl grows up. There's numerous mentions of the tall. So like one of the big ones is in book 2. That's really the only mention you get in book 1. But in book 2, there's a scene where Simon and Will and Kvothe are hanging out together, and they're talking about where they'd like to go if they had the opportunity. And so Simon goes, where would you go? Simon pursued his point doggedly for adventure. I thought for a moment quietly. I guess I'd go to Tallenwald, I said. Among the Tall, Willem asked. They're primitive nomadic people, from what I've heard. Technically speaking, the Dimaru are nomadic people, I said dryly. I heard a story once that said the leaders of their tribes are not great warriors, they're singers. Their songs can heal the sick and make the trees dance. I shrugged. I'd go there and find out if it was true. Then we also get mention of them in his story about the guy with the ass that falls off. Guy with the screw.
Yeah.
He's like, when he's like looking.
I love that
yeah,
story.
it's great. And he went to the Arcanist at the university thinking if anyone would know about the screws and their workings, they would, but the anarchists didn't know. The boy followed the road over the storm wall to ask the witch women of the Tall, but none of them could give an answer. And then the only other mention we get of the Tall is from Pintha, when Kvothe is asking, when they are talking about like sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, she goes like, if someone gave one to me, she gestured disgust, brushing at the front of her shirt in the first piece of Adim hand talk I'd ever learned from Tempe. Then I would make the long trek over the mountains to the Tall and to be cured of it. Even if the trip should take 2 years and bring no money to the school, none would think the least of me for it. And so we get these mentions of the Tall, and it's always mentioned that they got these healing powers with singing, and there's mentions of singing and magic associated with them multiple times. So I think that might be who the singers are. Could be not just that it's people singing songs and just minstrels. It could be specifically there's something to do with this magic of Tallenwald, the people of the Tall that have some kind of powers that are dangerous for the Chandrian.
That's interesting. So this ties into the Illishnots sympathy. I mean, we've kind of touched on all these. Yeah, you like that? I need to dig that one. Sigildry. I mean, it's another access or medium of sympathy, right? Or it could be.
Yeah.
But I hadn't made that connection because we talked about the singer scythes, whatever. I didn't think much about the Tall here, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, obviously it's tough to put together just off of that line in the book, you gotta, and then you gotta just kind of, they're just mentioned in these offhand comments where, like, you gotta really be paying attention and kind of collect them all and put them all together to kind of think that they even might have significance. What were you gonna say, Fitz?
Well, so I had not put that together, but now that you say that, it brings back to me, my thinking was that the Chandrian didn't like singing, whereas it actually turned out to be that it wasn't the singing, it was the fact that people were saying their names and telling stories about them. It wasn't the singing at all. And from what you're saying, it seems like it's kind of maybe a very quality red herring that Rothfuss has put in there to make you think that it's the singers, and the reason why Kvothe is, doesn't allow singing at the inn and so on and so forth, but actually it's not that at all.
Well, no, it could be. I mean, it could still be that, but it also could be that the singers have some magical power with the ability to sing. And we get a sense of that with Kvothe, with his musical ability when he's playing music, when he's playing a leaf turns and that kind of stuff. It seems magical.
Yeah, I think
so. There could be something magical about singing, and maybe he has some of that in him.
Yeah, I think we actually will get to that in the coming chapters just here, but yeah, he's tapping into that, and I think that's a threat to the Chandrian. And we talked about last episode how it seems like their names being named is the biggest threat to them. That's what it seems, as far as I can tell. That seems to be what Haliax is most fearful of.
Yeah, and it's part of Celatos's curse. Is like your name, will torment you or something along those lines. So something to do with their names is obviously a problem. But then the singers, the Scythe and the Emir, there might be something to the singers. And it also might be that Kvothe's seeming magical ability with his music and that his troop was killed because of the song Arladin was singing. Maybe Arladin maybe he started out with the Tall. Maybe he's a child of the Tall that became a Rue. Maybe he's just got that same type of ability. Maybe he doesn't realize he has that kind of magical power in his songs, or maybe he keeps it close to his vest that he has a little bit of magical ability. But it might be that Arladin has a similar prowess as what the Tall are rumored to have. Could be that as well.
Well, and we get a sense, at least the way that I'm making a connection here, we get a sense of this ability, and I've had it before when I've listened to music where you kind of can be entranced, and Elodin has that. He's not singing, but when he speaks, the whole room just gets like absorbed with this embodiment of what he's doing, whether it's naming or what it is. So I could see an interconnectedness there, which, I guess you could see why the Chandrian would be threatened by that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there might be some kind of magical ability with singing, and Arladin might have had it. Kvothe seems to have some kind of magical ability, at least with playing music on his lute. So might be something to it. I don't think there's enough to go on in the first two books to really hash it out, but it's something to watch for. I think I think we'll learn who the singers are in the third book. I don't know if Kvothe's going to go there, but I think we'll have a better idea of why they fear the singers by the third book.
You guys get the sense that the third book's going to have to be like 2,000 pages.
I hope it is.
To sew everything. I know. I'm saying though.
He says it's going to be shorter.
The story.
He says it's going to be shorter than A Wise Man's Fear.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's going to be shorter than 2. All right. Well,
yeah. But 2 is super long. It's 1,000 pages. But
yeah.
So I've been reading 2 again, and I just getting into it. I'm like, so because I remember there's so much that happens, and I'm still, I still haven't gotten to, well, whatever. We don't need to go there now, but yeah, he does a lot, man. He better not disappoint us. There better be a lot of Grey Dalsenti, or I'm going to be very disappointed. Yeah. And I want to hear more about Periel's Poontang and how it fits, and I can do it better.
It fits like a glove, man. Fits like a glove.
Just like fits. You guys are right. Hey, before we finish that up, Dan, could you just maybe explain who these people are? Kvothe, Rowan and Rita?
This is it.
It's like a traveling caravan. I don't know. There's mercenaries traveling with them. Doesn't seem like they are trading a lot. Maybe that they're getting paid to bring people from point A to point B. Kind of seems like that's their business.
They trade a bunch of stuff in Imre.
Yeah, they're moving product.
No, it could be, yeah. I don't know. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it because
it's not that significant.
No, it's just kind of a little side thing. It seems like they're trading goods and they're getting paid to bring people from point A to point B with them, just kind of as, people travel in groups. Similar to like the group that goes into Kvothe's bar in one of the first chapters when they're all traveling together and, for protection. So seems like, when you're traveling in this world, you want to kind of travel in groups to stay safe.
Yeah, it makes sense. Plus, they're traveling in wagons. You kind of need people to help at some certain points. I don't know if you played Oregon Trail, but you lose a wheel,
You get dysentery.
Yeah, you get dysentery and die, and that's it. But
I got it a couple times. Wasn't that bad.
Oh, really? Okay.
The game was overhyping dysentery. Had it 3 times. Didn't really faze me.
Jeez, man. You need to work on your diet. Shit.
That's how you get it down. Get it from the water, right? It's amoeba or something?
Yeah,
some kind of parasite?
Drinking out of puddles or something. I don't know what I did, but it wasn't that big of a
Do
deal.
a lot of puddle drinking?
Yeah. Thirsty and you're outside, you don't want to go inside and get a drink. You just,
Was that when you two were living together? Were you drinking Tim's puddles from his...
Yeah.
Going.
Well, you just took it in a gross direction.
Going back.
We just took a fun
of
story of me and my youth
point.
drinking out of puddles, and then you just made it gross.
Yeah, you
Tim's puddles.
You perverted it. You made it really gross. I'm disgusted.
Hey, I'm only making these points that are true to life. You guys know what I'm talking about, and I don't think that you should keep the reader in a state of unknowing.
Chapter 33.
Yeah. So, moving on.
All right. Chapter 33, A Sea of Stars. So, Kvothe sets off to Emre with his caravan after buying a cloak. At some point on the way, Denna catches Kvothe staring at her, and they start talking. And over the next few days, they become fast friends. They take a walk one night and end up spending hours sitting and talking on a waystone that's on the edge of a lake. Before the chapter ends, Kvothe pulls off the old Greg Brady, and he yawns and stretches, and he puts his arm around Denna. No, I'm kidding. That doesn't really happen.
No, he kind of peters out there. First thing I always think of, when this chapter goes on is, he talks about his cloak, which you get, this dude loves fucking cloaks, man. Yeah. He makes it sound like you would look super cool in a cloak. And then you're like,
he makes me love cloaks.
Yeah. And then you think about, like, you picture yourself wearing a cloak and you're like, well, no, you'd look like a fucking super huge nerd. Like, you're 100% wrong, Kvothe. You don't look good in a cloak. You with your cloak billowing, you look like frickin' George Costanza's lawyer. Or his dad's lawyer. Yeah.
That's a cape.
Frank Costanza's lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, a Jedi, I guess. But,
There you go. Yeah, Dan, until you start pulling out all your little knickknacks out of all the other pockets. Yeah. I got some gum over here.
Dan,
I got an apple.
Where are you going to keep all
a paper clip?
All your marbles, that you travel with?
Uh-huh.
These are my
toenail clippers.
These are my traveling marbles. I have a dried apple.
Gotta have your traveling marbles.
No, but yeah, he does romanticize the cloak. He sells it very well here, but he does sell it well as I can buy in this world the practicality of it for someone who's traveling, who's sleeping on the ground, But
yeah, this is a guy. This is a guy that he would find some reason to justify wearing a cloak. No one else is wearing cloaks. You don't see people there's no mention of anybody else wearing cloaks. This dude is like, they're the most practical thing ever.
Tarbean.
Like, nobody else is doing it.
Tarbean the Great.
This guy no matter what, he would come up with a justification for walking around wearing a nerdy ass cloak.
So
he loves them. He really loves them, and he sells them, man. He's a hell of a salesman.
In our world, is this guy wearing fingerless gloves?
Yeah. And he's talking about how practical they are. Like, look, I don't have any calluses. Like, I can work out in them. I can lift boxes all day. Just clean my callus. No calluses on my hands.
Do you guys think that secretly Rothfuss really is trying to make like a fashion jump and get people to start wearing cloaks so he can be cool wearing a cloak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he really likes them?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it is he wants to be wearing a cloak and he's trying to make that fashionable.
Okay.
Good luck, man. Good luck. I don't see it happening, but
Patrick, I'm in. I'm gonna get one.
I like the pockets, but at the same time, I'm not seeing myself.
No, I'm not wearing a cloak. It's not happening.
I mean, you might as well wear like a vest that has a lot of pockets on the front.
If I see someone wearing a cloak, like a hooded cloak, I'm gonna assume that they're a crazy person. I mean, that's just where my mind's gonna go. Like, there's. This person's got some mental problems. But he's a hell of a salesman because he sells it in this chapter. He makes it sound like it'd be appealing. Then we get to his introduction to Denna and his first time he's like talking to her. And starts off with the old 7 words. I was wondering what you're doing here. What's interesting about that is he says that, and then Elodin later on is like, there's 7 words that will make a woman fall in love with you, and there's always these weird parts with Elodin where he like either knows what Kvothe is doing or can see what Kvothe did. He can like read him like a book because there's this part where Kvothe says those 7 words to her, and then Elodin talks about the 7 words to make a woman fall in love with you, and then Kvothe, obviously, for the rest of the time he knows Denna, he speaks to her in 7 words constantly.
So I noticed that there's a contraction in there. Is that allowed?
Yes, that's 1 word.
Okay.
Contraction's 1 word.
All right.
But you also get it with, like, there's a part where Elodin asks him, like, Manette, when they're playing cards together, he's like, 3 spades have been laid down. There, there's 5 left in your hands. How many spades is that? He's like, 8 spades. Elodin asks him the same exact question. There's a time where when he's going to play for his talent pipes, Willem is like, spit for luck over this bridge. And then when Kvothe is leaving Imre to go to the mayor's place, Elodin stops him, talks to him for a bit, and then before he walks off, he's like, hey, spit for luck. So there's this weird dynamic with Elodin where it seems like he's either watching Kvothe or he's able to read things that have happened to Kvothe. There's this weird interconnectedness with them that it seems like he knows more than he's letting on.
That makes me think he's a mirror.
Possibly, yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
I take it more of his naming prowess, that he's able to see him in a similar way like the Kvothe can see him, but maybe not that omnipotent. But he when he says he feels like he's like reading him like a book, and I think he might be able to in a sense.
And we hear that a lot when he looks at you. He looks into you. Like he can see into you. And so this might be, it's going to seem like this is off topic, but I don't think it is to a degree. So Elxadal knows the name of fire, right?
Yeah.
And he can make fire. So he does it, and Kavoth's like, whoa, how do you do that? Blah, 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 blah. And then he says there's more to it than just making fire. And then he puts his hand in the fire, comes back out, and he's unscathed. My point in that is if Elodin is able to tap into all these other things, then perhaps, because we've talked about this before, where time is not necessarily linear, right? So if it's, I don't know, it's hard to describe what Elodin might be doing here, right?
Well, I think the best example of being able to read someone like a book is in Hespe's story, when Jax goes to the hermit in the cave, and the hermit like looks through his pack, and he's like, can you open this 3rd pack? I can't get it open, and it's tied up with the knots. And he looks at the knot, and he's like, you've been trying to chew this open with your teeth, and you've been biting it. And he's like, yeah, I've tried everything I could. And he knows like what he's done from the knot. He can like look at the knot and like speak to it like it's a living thing. And then when he looks at the different objects, he doesn't just know what the objects are. He can like speak to the objects. So it seems like he has this like deep understanding of things, and it seems like that Elodin also has this ability to just kind of look at things and be able to understand them or to speak to them, and to kind of gather information that you typically would not be able to gather from looking at a person or looking at inanimate objects.
So it'd be like you're seeing the experiences that these things have been through, or these people have been through. Yeah.
In Hespe's story, he's like saying like the rope told him what he did to.
No, yeah, I hear
but
it.
Like I think that I think like as far as like what would make more sense is that he's able to just kind of look at these things and intuitively figure out what has happened and be able to see into their past or into their future or things like that.
Well, doesn't Kvothe describe the namers as, and I think this happens in one of the very first chapters, but when you're able to name something, and when you're able to name something well, it's not just knowing the name of something, it's knowing that thing inside and out. Even better than that thing knows itself, when you are able to name something, you know it completely.
Well, we get another example of that with Celatos and Scarpy's story, when Celatos is able to, when he gets his powers back and he looks into Haliax, it's not just that he now sees that Haliax is bad, he sees what happened to Haliax. He sees that he tried to kill himself, and he sees into his past. He sees these things. So that's the kind of sense that I get with Elodin. It's not that he's necessarily spying on him, that he is so fucking powerful that he's able to, like Celatos could look into Haliax and see exactly what he did, that he went looking for knowledge he shouldn't look for, he killed himself, blah, blah, blah. I think Elodin is looking into Kvothe in that way.
So when, in the same vein, when Kvothe is playing Wind Turning a Leaf, he's understanding Wind Turning a Leaf. He's embodying it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hearing. He's encapsulated what that is. It's understanding what it is.
Yeah.
So it's that sleeping mind stuff, man. It's going back to that. It's because with Elodin, I mean, it almost seems effortless.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, it's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an understatement. I mean, he's one of the most interesting I've ever read.
And then another part on Denna is when he says that to her, when he says, "I was wondering what you're doing here," she immediately calls him out. She's like, "Liar." And she constantly catches him lying. Every time he lies to her, she immediately calls him out on it, and she's 100% correct. She can read this dude like a fucking book, other than she can't seem to pick up on how desperately in love he is with her. Like, she catch him in a lie, but she cannot sense that this dude wants me better than anything, other than getting revenge on the Chandrian. Like, he wants me better than anything on the planet.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Their relationship is very, very interesting. It's very well written, especially. I mean, from the beginning to as much as we see the delicate back and forth between them, what's said, what's unsaid. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and so there's another part that I wanted to bring up. They go on a walk. He and Denna go on a walk. Kvothe and Denna go on a walk, and they come upon these waystones. That is where they decide to have a conversation. And they say that one waystone's pointed at the sky and one's fallen down in the water, and they go out and lay on the waystone, and they kind of paint the scene of the reflection of the stars. And so they have stars above them, stars below them, and everything kind of the lake's placid and everything's kind of enveloping them. But it's another mention of a waystone. I don't know that anything significant happens there, except maybe, it's the first time that Kvothe and Denna really start to lay down some roots together, talking not about, they're not talking too much about, their pasts or anything like that, but talking to each other and developing a real relationship.
They seem to be getting an emotional connection. Did anybody else think of Felurian here?
This time I did.
For whatever reason, your memory of Felurian is wrapped up in that lake. So.
I gotta get through
That's
the
what
second
it
book
is.
again. It is. It's the waystones, it's the lake, it's the reflection, it's the stars. For some reason, I envision that every time I think of when he went into the Fae. So it's exactly
they talk about them in a lake, but it's I think when you go back through it, it's going to be less prominent than you remember.
I get that feeling because every time I've brought it up, nobody else has made a connection there. So that's why I'm kind of trying to get there, but it takes time.
But what I do think is, there's clearly, I don't think they mention waystones constantly in the book. We know there's significance to them, and we have suspicions that the way into the Lackless Door, that the Lackless Door is Waystones. The Doors of Stone, the Lackless Doors is Circle of Waystones. But it seems like he's drawn to them. Like, he's constantly going to Waystones,
He's always
chilling
stopping
at
at 'em.
Waystones, sleeping at Waystones.
They seem to be these significant moments of his life. Yes, he seems to be at these Waystones, and it always makes me think
That's
when
a
you
good
said
point.
drawn to him. That's what
like a lodestone.
Lodestone, exactly. That's where I was going to go. It's like a lodestone, but so the Waystone perhaps draws human beings, right? Or certain types of human beings, perhaps of his lineage. I don't know.
Yeah, it
But
seems
that's a
like
really
he's
good
drawn
point,
to him
Tim.
in some way. Go ahead.
That's a really good point, Tim, that he's drawn to him at significant points, or maybe not drawn to him, but he's at Waystones at significant points in his life.
Yeah, they seem to
over and over and over.
Yeah, they seem to mark experiences in his life as well, and they keep. That's one thing that I've realized this read through, that I need to have a keener eye towards them, because there is.
Let's
more
keep track of that.
But and then the Waystone Inn. Fitz and I were talking about this one time, where it's he names the Waystone Inn, or his bar, the Waystone Inn, and the Waystone Inn also seems to be a representation of a channel to me, because it's a channel to Kvothe from Kvothe. You know what I mean? There's definitely significance in it. It'd be very obtuse of us to not admit that.
Yeah, and it goes, like, you can go back to the poem that when he asked about Waystones to his parents, and they're like, there's a poem associated with them. In the poem, they go, like a drawstone, even in our sleep, standing stone by old road is the way, blah, blah, blah. The rest of it doesn't matter. But the drawstone is just another word for loading stone. So, like, even in the poem that they tell, it's described as, like, having this power just to, like, attract things to it, pull things through it. And it seems clear that there's something about Kvothe that attracts him to Waystones, because he's around him constantly. He dreams about him. I think the Lackless, the Doors of Stone are Waystones. And obviously, I think, Kvothe's going to play a significant part in opening the Doors of Stone. So there's clearly something to do with it. It's just hard to figure out exactly why he's drawn to him. What is actually happening that is pulling him towards him. But it seems pretty clear that something's pulling him towards Waystones.
Well, I mean, and
Greystones.
Obviously, as we have spoke, it's embedded in his tradition, right? And from his childhood, there's that. But it's bigger than that. Clearly, it's great too, because it's subtle, man. And Rothfuss has a great ability to bring in these subtle, persuasive things, like Waystones, like sympathy, like because there's so many mentions. It's not like it's subtle that it's clearly here. It's subtle, the meaning of it, right? And what it really is telling us. Same thing with like Tinkers, man. Like, they know something. There's a suggestive nature to how they can help you, and when you don't follow what they say, something bad happens to you. It's that subtle underlying sort of intuitive connectiveness. I don't know. It's great. I don't know. I like making these connections, trying to figure out what eventually it's going to be.
Yeah, it's very mysterious, but there seems to be something, with everything. Like, that's why I always say it doesn't feel like he's wasting any words. I think he's trying to give us hints, and he's just trying to be super subtle with the hints so that it's not obvious. And he gives multiple interpretations where you can see every little thing from so many different angles and have a justifiable reason for your position. So he does a bang up job as far as, making this podcast worthwhile doing. Like, I mean, this is like, there's not a lot of books that when you reread them that give you so much ability to speculate and analyze and be able to turn every rock over and just pick apart every little part, but he does it masterfully.
Hey, Dan, on a simpler note, or maybe a little bit more trivial, I want to just make something clear. Is Lodin stones are like magnets,
Correct.
but they're not the same as waystones, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to, do they call them waystones and graystones?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. That's the two things I had asked.
Yep.
There is something good. Well, I was just going to mention something else about the chapter, unless you're going to talk about what you were just talking about.
Yeah, I only had one more thing to bring up about the chapter. Go ahead.
I was going to say, this is something you were talking about before, about Kavoth's self-esteem. There's a
that's what I was going to bring up, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, huge reveal, which totally backs up your claim about that, where he's saying, he almost asked her to come with him. What could I say? Come away with me, stay with me, come to university. And I mean, go as far as, what could I offer? Nothing. Anything I said would sound foolish, a child's fantasy. He's always doing that to himself, man, where he's always like, well, what can I offer? And then he's so scared of looking foolish. And many times, he uses that with the masters, where he's like, well, I can't say I'm here for the Chandrian because they're going to look at me like I'm an idiot. He's probably not wrong about that. There might be a few that wouldn't, but there's enough that would, that it could fuck up his, entrance to the university. But in this sense, I mean, it's definitely just that lack of self-esteem, which he just, who knows if we'll get it back, right? I mean, because well,
what's amazing is he says all that, and he's ready to express his undying love with her immediately. I mean, this dude falls
he just met her,
head over heels fucking right off the bat. Like, Jesus Christ, dude, fucking take a breath. But he's immediately in love with her, and he's ready to spill the beans right off the bat, and the super faux pas. Don't fucking tell somebody you love them the first time you fucking meet him, you weirdo. But he's about to do it, and then but he doesn't think I shouldn't tell her that because I've only known her for 30 seconds. He's like, I'm not worth it. I have nothing to offer her. But then what's interesting is, we'll come upon it here in the next couple chapters, but she's like the total opposite. She's like, hey, come with me. You teach this guy how to play music, and, we'll be bums together. We'll just fucking, she's clearly willing to just fucking roll out with this dude in his current state, in his current, condition. She's not expecting him to be some rich dude. She's willing to be like, be with me. I'll run game on these dudes. I'll get us with money. We'll make it. We'll figure it out. You'll teach him how to play music. We'll work it out. We'll figure something out. She's completely down. Completely down. And then, but in his mind, he's like, I'm a piece of shit. I have nothing to offer. I can't do anything for a woman. His self-esteem after Tarbean is only in the aspect of being a provider, being a husband figure. In that sense, his self-esteem is completely shot.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because even a little bit before what you're talking about, where Denna even says, "What's it like to know where you're going?" So she's kind of like, she's looking at him like he's kind of got his shit together, at least compared to her, because I love she's fun to talk to. Obviously, we're not talking to her, but in the book where it's like, well, where am I going? Because I don't know. You tell me. And just she's like playing that out, where she is leaving it more open, and he's just not. He just didn't pick up on the hints, man.
No, not at all. It's just his self-esteem. It's not there.
Well, but even when you said liar, or when she said liar, I took that as she's flirting with him. She's assuming he's, and he just doesn't. He just looks away.
She's 100% flirting with him, and even when he looks over at her, when in the previous chapter when he just looks over, she smiles and waves at him, and he just immediately turns his head. He's like that prototypical shy, awkward high school boy that just doesn't know how to talk to women yet.
Wearing a cloak on top of it all.
Yeah, because he's a huge fucking nerd. So, it's understandable. I mean, he thinks his cloak is bad as fuck, but it's understandable that he should not go talk to girls while he's wearing that nerdy ass cloak. Like, dude, fucking put on a damn suit or something, man.
If Denna
Fucking
had just
suit up, dude. You just wearing this cloak, looking like a fucking crazy person.
if Denna had just made fun of him and been like, nice cloak, dude.
He
would have changed Kvothe's game.
He would have broke apart.
Like, really?
If she
I
made
love
fun
you.
of his cloak, that dude would have never recovered. He wouldn't have made it to the university. He would have hung himself right there.
Oh, Jesus.
If she would have done it, been sarcastic about it, Kvothe would have never picked up on it and been told.
I'm joking, yeah.
But as far as that goes, it's not that his confidence lacks in any aspect except with her. I know we've talked about it before, but he doesn't have a problem with confidence in any other situation. Look at him in the next few chapters when he gets to university.
Yeah, man, he's fine with people double, triple his age.
Even
ran
other
roughshod
girls.
over fucking Tarbean to get out of there. Perfectly fine intermingling in the group, playing his music. He's like, I'm a bad motherfucking dude when I play music. Like everything.
Well, when it comes to
his sympathy dealing with him, like he's unbelievably confident. He's arrogant. But in this one area, Tarbean has completely fucked up his confidence.
So I think
he does not see himself as a provider.
Maybe this does speak to what you were kind of alluding to with Denna. Maybe she does see into him. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe he can sense it, and it puts him on his feet. I mean, we know he's in love with her, and that's going to be a big part of it. But
I think she's deeply in love with him. So I think, if he could sense it, he would sense that she's deeply, she's at least as madly in love with him as he is with her.
What I mean is, perhaps that puts him on his heels. Like he's being
her abilities and her prowess.
Yeah, and maybe
throws him off kilter. But he's like that with all the girls. Like he doesn't think Fella likes him, and Fella's clearly in love with him in the the first book. Yeah. He doesn't sense it there. Like Devi offers to sleep with him, and he just ignores the offer. Like, he does not see himself in that capacity.
Right, but he's not like. Not like with Denna. He's even with Fella, when Fella kind of throws herself at him to some extent. He's not awkward about it. He just kind of turns it down because he's in love with Denna at that point.
Yeah, but he's not awkward with Denna either. Like he's perfectly comfortable. Like in this situation, they're having a great night. This would be the opportune time not to be like, I'm fucking head over heels in love with you, weirdo, but to be like, hey, you're pretty fucking cool. We should hang out.
Or he could make somewhat of a move.
Yeah.
He could make a sexual move at some point. Not
express your undying love to someone the first day you meet him, but he could have made a move, but he doesn't. But like with Denna, the difference I think is with Denna, he clearly wants her. With Fella, he thinks she's attractive, but he's not into Fella. With Devi, he thinks she's cute, but he's not into Devi. He's into Denna, and that's like the difference. But with all three of them, he could have made a move on all three of them.
Well,
it's like the idea of it is absurd to him.
Well, and what's interesting about what ends up coming up with Denna is he thinks about it. He just can't even come close to dealing, because he considers, what if she shut me down? How would I ever live my life after that? I couldn't he can't allow her to see him like she sees the dudes that he has seen her, run roughshod over.
I think
not at
there's
this
an
point,
important
but
point.
Forward, that also gets added in. That gets layered in. Yeah,
I'm saying that because we're talking about Fella and these other examples.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But
so I think we ought to bring up an important point that's obvious, but Denna is Kvothe's weakness. More than his arrogance, more than his anger, Denna's his weakness, his biggest weakness anyway.
Yeah, his biggest vulnerability. I don't know if I would say weakness, but vulnerability, yeah.
Yeah,
if you were going to go after Kvothe and not go after him directly, Yeah, exactly. If you were going to go after Kvothe and not go after him directly, Denna would be the biggest vulnerability, followed by Will and Sim and Manette and you know, and then Trappist and all those guys. Like, yeah, he's but yeah, she's the biggest one.
And it's also one of those things that it's so precious to him that he doesn't really talk about, you know, how he feels for her with even Will and Sim. He kind of talks around it, but he doesn't talk about it, you know, in an accurate sense, you know. So that's one of his traits. He can't let people all the way in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's clearly like, I mean, they're well aware that he's deeply in love with her. He's in denial.
I was going to say they see it through observation, and they're also, he's got a weird thing about emotions between individuals. He can't see it while they can, and they point it out repeatedly to him. It's a really really interesting way to write the character, man, because he's so high in so many abilities, and then you chop him off in these types of
and Denna is so fucking similar.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Denna, like, when she's, like, drugged up, or she, like, every now and again tells him, like, hey, you can make a little bit of a move, you know? You know, she's like, I appreciate that you give me my space, but you don't have to give me that much fucking space. They're very similar in the fact that they just don't see what the other person sees. But there's a lot of criticism over the way Rothfuss wrote Denna. They're like, she does, like, a lot of women are like, she doesn't seem very realistic. She's not like any girl I've ever met. I 100% disagree, because I've met a lot of women that are very much like Denna. Now, I'm probably hanging in a different sort of women than these girls are hanging out with. Like,
a lot of prostitutes, Dan?
No, not necessarily prostitutes, but you hang around some girls swinging on a pole every now and again, you're gonna run into some fucking Dennas. there's some girls in that realm that are very much like that, and like, so, like, she rings very true to me, and she rings very true to, like, you know, 20-year-old dudes hanging in a strip club. Denna rings, she's a more sophisticated, more intelligent, got her shit more together, but she's got these kind of broken qualities to her. There's something clearly fucked up has happened to lead her down this path that she's on, but she seems realistic to me.
What's the criticism?
That she's not realistic, that they don't know other girls that act like Denna or that are like her, but she seems realistic to me.
I'm saying she seems very realistic to me, and while I might not be able to get into any girl's head, very much so seems like Denna. A lot of girls I've met seem like Denna.
Yeah,
not just strippers.
I agree as well. She's an independent type of woman, is the way she reads to me. She doesn't have a support system. So she's
but at the same time, she's self-conscious. She is not confident in the way that she portrays herself to Kvothe. I mean, it rings true. You know, even
got her guard up, ready to fucking dip out at a moment's notice. Like, I've met so many girls like that. Like, she rings very true to me, but there is a lot of people I don't think that have hung around the type of girl that is like that. They don't. You know, they don't see it, and I 100% see. Makes me think that Rothfuss was hanging out at fucking strip clubs a lot when he was writing this book.
I will say I find it surprising. It surprised me when you said it, that that's a big critique that people have, and I get people have critiques about way certain things are written, and I can understand that because everybody's different, everybody has their own perspective, but that is not something that would have occurred to me. That is a surprising thing for me to hear, having read these books.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because I knew you guys wouldn't see Denna that way, but so many people do, and I think that's where, you know, I think it's what experiences have you lived through, and what have you seen in your life? I think it's just one of those kind of things where, you know, if you haven't ran into a Denna before, she's gonna seem fucking weird, but if you've ran into a lot of Dennas before, she seems, exactly like those, except for a little bit, maybe better education, a little more sophisticated.
Hey, I bet Rothfuss was crushing it at the strip clubs, telling those strippers how he's writing a book.
Yeah.
Hey, you want me in my book? I bet he was crushing it.
So that's where he came up with Shandy. Shandy's dance, man.
What if
I'm in love with the stripper.
What if Rothfuss is Ambrose? Huh?
Yeah.
What if that's his background and he's just he's a self-loathing noble?
Yeah, he's definitely not. But yeah,
I like experimenting.
He's more of a manette. Like was in college for like 7 years or something along those lines. He's more of a manette figure than with his big wizard beard and
cloak.
Yeah, he's rocking a cloak in college. But I think that probably, yeah. I don't have anything. That was the last kind of point I wanted to bring up towards this chapter. I don't know if you guys got any last words on it.
No, I mean there is one little like note that maybe ties into what we were saying about how they are similar. I like, and this comes across a few times, or we get this sense, but Kvothe says, I sense that there were things she would rather not talk about, and by the way she avoided questioning me, I think she guessed the same. And we spoke of ourselves instead of fond imaginings and possible things. So we get that sense quite a bit, where, and you mentioned that as well, where she's like, every now and then you can make a little bit of a move, they're very like respectful of one another, and they read each other really, really well. They read each other's like vibe really, really well. Yeah, I don't know. That particular quote is meaningful here in their first meeting, their first, conversation, because that feeling kind of lasts throughout.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll have more to say on Denna, but I mean, she comes up so many times, like, we'll flesh her out as we go along. But yeah, Denna's an interesting character that's going to play a huge role in the rest of the story.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then. So chapter 34 is called Yet to Learn. So the next day, a guy named Jazan joins the caravan and immediately starts making moves on Denna. So Kvothe immediately hates him. And that night, Jazan pulls out his lute and begins to play a couple songs, including Tinker Tanner. When he's done playing, Kvothe kind of instinctively asks him if he can see his lute and hold it, and he allows him, and Kvothe starts tuning it and begins playing it almost mindlessly. And for some time, he doesn't even really know how long, but in a way that both shocks and moves all the other people in the carriage, and it actually makes Denna weep. So after he gets done playing, and everybody's kind of touched by it, Kvothe walks away. He's definitely in a state of some sort, and he starts crying like a little bitch again. But so then it goes into chapter 35, a parting of ways. So I believe it's the next day the caravan arrives at Imre, and Rita, Rowan's wife, thanks Kvothe for his help and gives him a copper jot. And Kvothe asks Derek, who's a fellow worker, why she did that. And he mansplains that Sealdish men have their wives pay for everything. So Kvothe and Denna say their goodbyes, and Kvothe worries that he may never see her again as he goes into the university.
Yeah, I love the beginning to 34 when he's like, his name was Jazan, and he had paid Rowan for passage to Annalyn. He had an easy manner and an honest smile. He seemed an earnest man. I did not like him. That's so great.
Yeah, that's great. He's got a knack for those little twists. We're like, what?
If it's not clear for the audience, I'm a big fan of deadpan humor.
Yeah.
Most of my jokes are delivered in a deadpan manner, and Rothfuss is really good about writing deadpan humor. He does it here. He also does it in the so I wasn't gonna I couldn't go see Scarpy. I couldn't take the risk, and then I was entering the bar to see Scarpy. So like he does a really good job of writing deadpan humor into the story.
Yeah, it's great. I love those little moments. They're nice, and it's very abrupt, and the abruptness of it is what lends more emotion to it. But yeah, he goes right into the reason.
Yeah, and Kvothe's hatred for, you almost hate Jocelyn right with him because he's always sitting next to Denna and moving in, and you could just sense it as a man. This girl that you're after, and this son of a bitch comes up and starts moving in on her, and she's accepting it. There's nothing you can do about it. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's so great after the last chapter. I just feel like I'm totally like, yeah, fuck that guy. Fuck this dude. Who's this dude?
Who's he think he is?
See, I read it and I'm like, God damn it, Kvothe, like if you're trying to get friend zoned, this is how you get friend zoned.
True.
You act like a little,
go sit in the back of the carriage and
petulant child because she's talking to some other dude that has bigger balls than you, that's willing to fucking, say the things he's not willing to say, and he wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to not take any risk, and he wants all the reward, but he's not willing to risk anything to get the reward. And Jocelyn is like, fuck that, I'm gonna fucking take the risk. If you're not gonna fucking do it, I'm gonna do it. And so, like, if you want to get friend zone, that's how you get friend zone.
Let's not sidestep the fact that Kvothe's being a little bitch and like sulking in the back, like letting it all happen. If you got to go after what you want. There's no
100%, man.
Not going to gain anything
risk,
by
man.
sulking.
Like, I get it. He's 15 years old, came out of Tarbean, so like, yeah, I get it. I understand, but you still like, I haven't experienced those things. I didn't live through those things. I'm just reading about them, and I'm like, nah, man. Yeah, you want to get a girl, you got to put your nuts on the line a little bit. You can't just sit back and hope that they read your non-existent signals.
Well, not only that, but us as readers, knowing Kvothe, who he is, what he's capable of, how much more of a man he is than this Jocelyn guy. It's almost frustrating.
And Denna knows it too. I mean, Denna's fully aware of this. Like, even when Jocelyn and her are writing together, what's she doing? She's like, hey, maybe Kvothe could teach you how to play that fucking lute you're carrying around.
Yeah.
Like, she sees it. Kvothe is just, he's not there yet. He's got to meet Florian to get a little piece of that out of him, to bring him out of that state a little bit, to realize he's not a fucking child and doesn't need to be walking like a deer in headlights around women.
Yeah, give him that instinctual testosterone kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got to go through puberty.
Something. It's something.
Still hair on them balls.
Yeah. He's yeah. Yeah,
he's still acting like grade school.
It is frustrating to read.
It's super frustrating. But what kills me is it's more understandable that Denna doesn't realize that Kvothe is into her than it is the other way around. Like, because he doesn't say anything. He plays off his compliments as jokes, as being way over the top, and it's like it's like playing a game with her. He rarely shoots her straight, and then even when she gives him the signals and says, hey, you could fucking make a little extra move, he doesn't make the extra move. So it's more understandable that she doesn't realize how into her he is, but it's completely not understandable that he doesn't see it, because she fucking tells him explicitly.
Yeah.
Like, make a fucking move, dude. Not here. But
no, when they're before.
But later on, she makes it much more clear that she's into him, and so his ability to not read the signals is very fucking frustrating. Hers is frustrating, but more understandable.
Well, it's especially when he does the Bill Cosby on her, she reveals her feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, he roofied her, fucking let her in, walked her straight into it.
You're right, though. That's when she really does kind of lay it all on the line, is when she's stoned. right before he goes and kills the Dracus.
Now, obviously, he didn't go through with the Bill Cosby because he even says it would be a real shitty, a bastardly thing to do.
Yeah, he also doesn't drug her.
Yeah.
She drugs herself.
Okay,
but yeah. Yeah, it's almost the same thing.
The chapter, the main, to me, and I think to anybody, the main big sort of takeaway is he plays, right? He plays the lute. And it's really amazing. The whole approach to it, how he sits and he listens to. It's great though too, because it's not just like Fitz said in the intro there. It's not just that he can't help himself and he's like, yeah, he asked to see the lute. He knows better. That's the way he says it. He knows better than to hold another musician's instrument, but he just can't. He can't not ask him. He can't not do it.
Yeah, he's like an addict.
Yeah, but it's interesting because we get into it and he's tuning it and the guy's like, whoa, like, because he thinks he's the fucking master musician here and this is just some kid. So he's like, whoa, you'll turn it from true, and he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So then Kvothe starts doing it, and then he just goes into this state, right? Which to me he sinks into that place that.
Yep.
That sleeping mind.
This is one of those undefined. This is one of those kind of undefined where you know something or you sense that something else is going on, but you can't put your finger on it. What is actually happening? But you know he's not just playing the lute. I mean, he is, but something else is going on.
Yeah,
and you don't really find out that you're right about your senses until the end when they're like, everybody had their jaws on the floor or their mouth on the floor, and Denna put her face in her hands and just starts weeping and
yeah, it's not even singing. It's just from the music.
I was going to say, I mean, what's so artfully done here by Rothfuss is it's not a song. He just plays, and he starts off with playing, making the sound that to him is what the lute says. It's as if the lute's saying sad. And then he just keeps kind of moving, and then the chords are just like whispering against each other, and there's a lot of subtlety there. But I mean, what's really really telling is he literally is saying, "But sitting beside the fire, bending over the lute, I felt the hard, unpleasant parts of myself that I had gained in Tarbean crack, like a clay mold around a now cool piece of iron that they fell away, leaving something clean and hard behind."
So well written.
Yeah, that's the point where you feel like, okay, now he's fully awake.
Yeah, this is a turning point.
If I can just
maybe there's a little bit of lingering things until he gets his flute. He's not completely whole, but he's Kvothe again. It's
not.
He's changed. He's different. He's gone through some hard times. He's not exactly the same person, but he's back to Kvothe, who's gone through some horrible shit.
I was going to say, because it's a new version of him that has now gone through growth. And I mean, he goes through some real shit going through that. But what's so kind of amazing about it is that it happens in live time in front of this group of people, and it's while he's playing. So they're literally hearing this happen, right? You know what I'm saying?
Hearing him play if I can just throw this in there, for the first time since he left the woods right after his mom and dad died.
Yeah,
and it's the way they describe it. Like, then I felt something inside me break, and music began to pour out in the quiet. My fingers danced intricate and quick. They spun together something gossamer and tremulous into the circle of light our fire had made. The music moved like a spider web stirred by a gentle breath. It changed like a leaf twisting as it falls to the ground, and it felt like 3 years waterside in Tarbean, with a hollow inside you and hands that ached from the bitter cold. And the reaction when he stops, the reaction is that they felt it. They felt 3 years and waterside and the struggles that he went through. He played them how horrible what he just went through was. He played that for them just through the music without any lyrics, and they felt it. And it caused Denna to break down and cry. And Rita was like, hand over her mouth, just like, oh my, like in shock. And just everybody was just stilled, everybody had a very similar reaction of, whoa, this dude's been through some shit. So like he played that for them. That's definitely seems magical.
So I'll just want to throw this out there. If you guys have ever, I don't know about you, but I like to listen to symphony music occasionally. And I kind of, it does something for me where it's not like regular hip hop or country or some normal kind of music. You can sit there and listen to symphony music and kind of imagine what the original author's trying to portray to you. You know, with the upbeat and the slowed down, you can kind of use your imagination and make your own story up in your head. And so when you're talking about him being in Oceanside and how he's playing, it reminds me of a violin, because that's what really touches me. The sadness of it, like those deep cries of a violin. And I don't know, maybe I love music. So when they explain Kvothe, making people weep and how he's doing it by just explaining what he's going through or what he's gone through, it really touches home to me because, music touches me in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of talking about that, half joking last time, where I mentioned, certain jazz guitarists have an ability, and certain just musicians themselves have an ability to use the instrument to portray a feeling, right? And a lot of that, yes, symphony has that because there's so many instruments that can be involved, and they're all playing in unison, and there's a lot of, there's a tremolo, and there's a lot involved where you can pull at the heartstrings. But even sometimes just like I was listening to like Kenny Burrell, just as a guitarist, but there's a lot of breath in between notes, and there are certain ways you can play that certain emotion. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, it's hard to explain music. To me,
yeah.
But
he does a good job. Rothfuss does a great job.
I was shocked to find out that Rothfuss is not a musician. That's shocking to me because of the way he's able to write it. Yeah. Now he
writes it. I've never read any book where music is written so compelling and so well.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you guys, I recommended this. When I was reading it the first time, I could not think about it and everything I was doing. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine who's a musician, who's a guitarist, and I was like, dude, you got to read this. Like, it's just, it's amazing how he writes music. And I just kept thinking about it so much. And then when you told me he's not a musician, I'm like, how? Like he understands what music can do. He clearly, he clearly gets. And then, but
just that description, like something gossamer and tremulous, like, I mean, just his word choices, the emotional reactions that Kvothe gets from when he plays his music, like it seemed, it seems magical, but it makes you want to hear these songs.
Yeah.
Like you want to know what the fuck he's playing. Like I have to hear this song. This song sounds fucking awesome.
I feel like, unfortunately, like we feel with every book that becomes a movie or a TV show. You're like, well, it's not as good as it was in the book. Like if you could hear the music,
how can you live up
exactly
to
the soundtrack?
Like perfection is in what you're hearing in your mind.
Exactly. Well,
so there's no way you're going to be able to live up to that.
And that's
so you got to lower those fucking expectations.
Exactly, and that's what I was talking about, like with Denna. That's why it's so great to write Denna in the way that he did, where it's beauty. Well, what's beauty to you? It's the eye of the beholder, right? So it's the same thing with music. It's like, if it was, the Kingkiller Chronicles soundtrack brought to you by, Manny Fresh, or or DJ Khaled.
That might be good.
Well, I mean, and then we know, like, Tim is listening to this and he's hearing Bop.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
Because this song breaks Denna down into tears, and, that's what Tim hears when he cries, is Bop.
I can't help but think of a guitar, because if I've heard the lute played, I couldn't pick out. If I was to hear a line of instruments being played, I wouldn't be able to pick out a lute. It just seems like, what is a higher note than guitar typically?
You ever seen Monty Python?
I think of it like a little, like a thing you're plucking the
It's a minstrel. What a minstrel
more than
plays.
A guitar. Yeah.
No, I mean I know what it.
It's what a minstrel
I know what
plays.
a lute is. I'm just saying if I heard it, it would be hard for me to pick out a lute next to a guitar or a banjo or other stringed instruments that are similar, like a mandolin.
Like I just think of like the big difference is more of like a plucky sound of the strings rather than
kind of
the guitar
folksy.
is just dragging the pick across them, whereas they're more plucking the notes. Is how I hear it, and then when I
think
see
it sounds like more like a
on
harp.
different shows and stuff where people like play a lute type instrument, it's very plucky,
or like
the way they're
like the difference,
a sitar,
somewhere between a guitar and a guitar and a harp,
or a pedal steel, guitar and a harp. Okay, yeah, all right, that makes I can buy that, yeah, especially with what.
You know what? Let's we'll get a sound bite and we could add it in here or at some point during the show so we all know what it sounds like.
Since I'm the one that would be doing that, that's not going to happen, folks. Sorry, you're going to be very disappointed. But yeah, the music is great, and yeah, but I think more like when I'm thinking of like sad music, if I'm thinking of sad, I'm more thinking of a violin type of a sound. But yeah, you can't say enough about the music, the way he writes it. It's so fucking good the way he writes it.
Yeah, it really is.
It's tremendously done.
There was one other thing that stood out to me in this chapter, and it's the last few paragraphs. It's another one of these situations where there's something that Rothfuss is trying to portray or is trying to hint at, and I just can't put my finger on it. Do one of you guys want to read it?
What are we talking about? Like the last couple of chapters? Because
the last couple paragraphs.
The last two chapters
about in that chapter.
Oh, sorry.
The last two paragraphs.
That's what I meant. All right. So, and that is how Kvothe spent his last night before he came to the university, with his cloak as both his blanket and his bed. As he lay down, behind him was a circle of fire, and before him lay shadow like a mantle gathered. His eyes were open, that much is certain, but who among us can say they know what he was seeing? Look behind him instead, to the circle of light that the fire has made, and leave Kvothe to himself for now. Everyone deserves a moment or two alone when they desire it, and if by chance there were tears, let us forgive him. He was just a child, after all, and had yet to learn what sorrow really was.
Yeah, so the big thing is he keeps crying, and he keeps losing my respect.
I should have teared up. I should have teared up when I read it. I got to work on my acting chops.
Yeah, he's got to stop crying. Like, pull yourself together, man.
So, I'm going to guess that Fitz thinks the shadow like a mantle.
Well,
yeah, that would be my guess. Is that's the big part that you're seeing. But go ahead.
Let me. So the few things that stand out. First of all, Kvothe has just played this sorrowful song. I'll call it a song that brings people to their knees because of what he's been through, and then he goes on to say, "But if he weeps, give him a break because he's just a kid and he doesn't know what sorrow is yet."
Yeah.
The other little nuance of that is it Kvothe talking about Kvothe in that way? He says, well, who among us know how Kvothe really felt? I mean, I realize that it's Coat, but doesn't he know how Kvothe felt at that point?
Yeah, I think he was taking a little license as a storyteller.
Well, what's interesting about that, he doesn't do that often. So it does sort of stand out.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a third-person element where it adds more gravity, right? Or gravitas, whatever adds more gravity to the situation if we weren't already picking up that this is a big moment.
And like you said, the other thing is the mantle, the shadow that he's looking at. And why is Kvothe, the author or the narrator at this point, why is he telling us to look behind him? We're moving forward in this story. He says, don't look at what Kvothe is looking at, which is a mantle of darkness, but look at the fire. behind him. Again, it's all a lot of just bits and pieces of something that I can't really put my finger on, but I wanted to bring it up because if you guys will agree or disagree with me, it seems to be something to it.
It seemed like he was taking poetic license with his story and giving it a poetic feel rather than, than to just dive into more of the sorrow and like now that he's finally like cracked open and going back into it again on just this guy breaking apart yet again as he's trying to put himself back together.
So I considered that Rothfuss may have done this to not have to go into an interlude again at this point because we are where we are and moving on the story. That he's like, look, yes, we all realize what Kvothe went through, and so whatever, let's move forward.
Yeah, and he does something similar after he tells the story about his parents. And he kind of waves it off. It's no big deal. And then he goes out and cries into his hands alone. He doesn't want to be seen doing this. And so, he's been describing these terrible events that he's going through. And so just kind of, the way I take it is he's just adding a little bit of poetry to his story, a little bit of flair to it. And instead of diving into why he's crying and, because it's obvious why he's fucking crying. He's finally like breaking back into himself, and he's just played a song that describes 3 years in this fucking shithole that he's been living in and all the fucking trauma that he's experienced.
Okay, but he describes that shithole not as bad. So do you put any weight on the description of a shadow?
No, I think I take that as like Rothfuss winking at us that there's some similarity between Haliax and Lanre and Haliax to Kvothe. Same with there's constant similarities between Lanre to Kvothe or Iax to Kvothe. I just think it's just another one of those things. I don't think it means that Kvothe is going to become another Haliax, but I think their stories definitely mirror each other in a lot of respects. I just think Kvothe maintains his humanity where those guys go off the fucking deep end.
I think the main thing he's emphasizing here is he's growing. This is a moment of growth. He's weeping for his past, which will be no more. He's moving on. That's the shadow like a mantle. That's his past, and he's not going to go back. We're not going to go back. And let him be basically in this moment because it's upsetting that he's never going to have his parents again. He's kind of, by opening this door, he's closing the door to his past.
Yeah.
So it's extraordinarily painful.
So, but I'll just go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to say, but he's moving on.
So I'll just throw this. We will also move on, but before we do, I'll just throw this out to put a pin in. The thing I really gravitated toward was his past being a fire and his future being a shadow, which I think it's at some point does mirror Lanre again.
The part that stands out the most to me is he was just a child after all, and had yet to learn what sorrow really was. God damn, boy! Like,
what's he gonna go through?
Yeah, what's he gonna go through?
You've already witnessed everybody you ever knew fucking get massacred, and you just saw all their dead bodies just torn apart. Like, and you just lived as a fucking bum where you either got raped or you escaped being raped, and you
it was a consistent
witnessed
threat. Yeah.
someone being raped, a little boy being raped, and had to just sit there and listen to it. Like, you don't know what fucking sorrow is? Jesus Christ.
What's he going to have to go through?
Yeah, he's definitely... Damn. Yeah, that's definitely setting it up for it's going to get real bad.
Yeah, Rothfuss, he just raises raised the fucking bar for whatever bad happens. Like, he raised the bar very fucking high. Like, it makes you think, like, someone like Sim is not going to make it out of this story.
But how does Sim
and
even
that he's going to
compare?
lose Denna. Like, I mean, he's going to lose everybody, obviously, because that's what clearly at the point we're at. He's lost everybody. But I think, like, it makes me think like someone like Sim is going to. It makes me think like someone like Sim is gonna get the axe before this story's done.
So to have the perspective of it being worse than what he's gone through, he'd have to have kids with Denna, and they both be ripped apart viciously by dogs or something. You know what I mean? Like, it'd have to be like the worst thing you can imagine. I don't mean to offend you.
It could also be like innocent, good Sim gets killed, by Ambrose because Ambrose can't get to Kvothe, and he goes and kills Sim, or maybe he kills Sim and Will.
Himself.
And
but does that worse than his parents and his
Denna?
Or perhaps even
it could be. I could see that being like Sim is just this. This.
He's like, very innocent
because it's not Kvothe.
He's simple,
his
like
parents
Tim.
dying. Hold on, but his parents dying.
He's innocent.
Yeah, but his parents dying. That's not Kvothe's fault at all. So what I'm saying, what could make it worse, is that Sim dies because he's been fucking nipping at Ambrose's heels, since he got there, and he's just been constantly fucking poking this bear, and finally the bear attacks and it fucking kills his friend. That would be worse. Because that is your fault.
What about like Kelvin or Loden?
He doesn't have that same emotional connection to them.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I'm just saying that's a shockwave to the world.
Yeah, I'm just
thinking about people he has connection
comparing it to like his parents dying. Like it seems like the most likely candidates for someone who we don't want to see die that's gonna fucking die. I think Sim is very high up on that list.
I think what you're mentioning that we've been talking about that seems like a must is he's going to have blood on his hands.
Yeah.
It's going to be something he does. He's going to have to make a choice. It just makes sense for where we get to. Well, yeah.
He does blame himself for whatever happened.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll necessarily be his fault, I think, but he'll blame himself. I think it'll be more like I could see like as far as like Sim dying, I could see it being like he blames himself for fucking with Ambrose all this time, and finally, it came back to bite him in the ass, and it ended up getting Sim killed, which is not really his fault. Fucking Ambrose is the bastard in that situation, but Kvothe would 100% blame himself for it.
Yeah, because he created the situation that Sim wouldn't have been in if it wasn't for Kvothe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could see that. And then and Ambrose is the bastard that would kill somebody because he's close to him and he can't get to it.
Yeah, 100%.
So kill somebody else that's close.
He would do it just to hurt him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fucking Ambrose, man. Again, fucking little bastard.
Again, we figured something out.
Yeah.
Should we tell
I'm going to curse Rothfuss out like, fuck you. Fuck you for what you did to Sim.
Yeah, what?
We know it was you, Patrick, and it breaks our heart.
Why would you kill him? The book hasn't even came out. He's gonna be like, how'd they fucking nail it on the head? And then we tell him about the Lone Ranger and Tonto, man, and then he's just gonna be his mind's gonna be blown. He's like, well, I might as well not even write this book if it's that obvious.
It's gonna crush him.
Yeah,
crush him.
Maybe we shouldn't put this out.
Yeah. We should wait until the third book comes out before we break his heart.
We have too much power. There's just too much power with these theories.
Then moving into 35, there's not a ton to say because it's super short. He learns that he's not as wise about the world as he believes. Through kind of learning about the why she would give him the money and not Rowan, and so he kind of learns that he's not as world wise as he thought he was. But the biggest thing that I get out of this is, one, he sees Denna when he stops looking, which is always the case. It's a theme that's going to play throughout. He just finally like, all right, well, can't find her. So and then he turns and there she is.
Standing
But
right there.
The other aspect of that is, Denna, again, she makes it clear, like, hey, fucking come with me, man. Go with me to Annalyn. We'll figure it out. We'll make it work.
It's insane because he just thought this. He's like, nah, I'll seem like an idiot. And then she brings it up, and he's like, for a half second. But he's like, nah, I got the university. I can't do it. Can't do it.
Yep, she actually says, hey, I talked to Jazin. He's into it.
It made it sound like a threesome.
Yeah.
I know. That's what caught me myself off guard. I stopped talking about it.
No, you're right. It's great how she mentions because she's like, yeah, I told him you could teach him how to play that lute, which is great. You're like, damn, dude, she's down, bitch.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like she's cool, man.
She is.
She's into it.
Put it like that.
Classic. For you young folks, a lot of these references are Seinfeld references. You're missing. Go back through.
Well, we had a few It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia references
That's
just
true.
in this episode. But yeah, that's kind of what I got out of the chapter. He does kind of double back to We Rue Our Travelers. So he talks more about that, which he's following what he should be doing. But yeah, we get that back and forth with Denna that kind of never really goes away.
And the last thing I'll mention on it is when he's like, "I'll never see her again." That's another one of those points where you could read that multiple different ways because she is different when she comes back. So he never sees this girl again. He sees
Do you think
more hard and more sophisticated version
the multiple names
of her. Yeah, she's changing her names, and she's different. She seems older.
So,
Dan, even when she hold on 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
And she also, after he runs into her when he gets his talent pipes. And, like it's been like half a year or give or take. And when he's like, what happened to Denna? Why'd you change your name? And she's like, oh, Denna. She's like, I forgot that girl. That was an innocent girl. It seems so long ago. It seems like there's been a much bigger gap for her than for him. Like maybe she went into the Fae or something like that.
Do you think
it
she
does
was
not seem like it's the same gap for her as it is for him. Go ahead.
Do you think that she was a prostitute up to this point, like living that life?
According to, I believe it's Diak, yes.
Yeah, the guy in the
yeah, because he's known her. Yeah, like
Aeolian.
He's known her for at least another half a year more than at this point. Like he's known her for at least about a half a year by this point. By the time that Kvothe meets her here, Diak has known her for at least half a year as this fucking temptress.
So it's not that she's now a hooker or whatever. It's something more substantial or as substantial. Something has changed inside of Denna and not just what she does for a living.
Well, I mean, when he mentions to Elodin, I believe he asked Elodin, what would you think about a girl who changed her name? He's like, whoa, you didn't do that, did you? Like, he's like alarmed. So we start to realize that that's a big deal. There's power in that. So if she's just playing these different roles, she's also probably hurting herself, holding herself back, or hiding from something.
Or she doesn't know who she is, or she's dipping in and out of the Fae, and there's many different aspects of Denna to speculate on. It's hard to pin down exactly what it is, but there's something to do with her and the moon. She's very similar to the moon as far as like Iax's story. There's many mentions of the constant mentions, or as Tim would say, consistent mentions of her in regards to the moon.
It's even mentioned in
there's
these
mentions
chapters we covered.
Yeah, there's mentions of her towards Yill, to the Yillish. There's mentions that would make it seem like maybe she's going in and out of the Fae. That she
does seem to dabble quite a bit in a lot of different things.
Yeah,
right.
And it doesn't seem like she knows herself.
Yeah, no, I get that. 100%. And she seems to be, I don't want to say half measured, but she seems to be, again, dabbling in so many of these different things, I guess trying to find herself.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, going back to saying you've never met a woman like that. I've met many, many women like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I've met many women like that are constantly thinking, well, I could do this, or this. They're just very artistic types typically.
Yeah.
Or maybe autistic.
And she's also, beyond trying to find herself, like, I don't even know kind of where I was going to go with it. But there's something more to her than just the surface, and her ring too. Like there's, she's got a ring. There's something to that, and we don't really understand exactly what it is. Is it magical? Is it just a family heirloom? But there's something, and it seems like, she's probably been raped from her when Kvothe eavesdrops on her talking. She rescues a girl in the second book when he's with Mare Alvaron. She rescues a girl from getting raped. She pulls out a knife and Kvothe is watching this scene from the top of the rooftop. She protects this girl and saves her from getting raped. And through this story, it sounds like that she had a similar kind of trajectory where she left her family, thought it was going to be one thing, turned out like she ended up getting, raped, and ended up going the prostitute route. And so she either grew up in a family where she learned sophistication, where she could mingle among the top echelon of people, or she made arrangements where she was able to learn these things from other people and learn these skills. But there's something going on with her. She's either from nobility, has learned from nobility, was around nobility, or she was taught how to mingle with nobility, because she clearly can.
So do you think that she might mirror Kvothe's mom in, I'm sorry, what's the Virgin
Arladin?
Mother's? No, the Virgin Mother's Periel Poontang.
Poontang Periel?
Denna,
Poontang?
Denna, Kvothe's mom, Periel Poontang. The similarities between them.
I see none between Periel. I don't see anything that resembles Denna with Periel. But there possibly could be similarities with Arladin and Natalia Lackless and Kvothe and Denna. It could be that Denna came from a noble family, and maybe she was like promised to some dude she didn't want to marry, or she just didn't like that lifestyle, and she escaped. But instead of Kvothe being there to free her from that shit, she went her own route, and some terrible shit happened to her.
Well,
she ended up where she is.
There are other rumors of Periel Poontang were that she was a whore.
Oh, yeah, in that respect. Yeah, but outside of that, just one reference. Like, I mean, we don't know enough about Periel to comment on her personality and stuff. Like, I don't see anything that I think like Denna with her.
I was thinking about this, going back to the chapter, I was thinking about this, how this ends. On the first read through, you're kind of left with some hope here that he's going to the university, yes, but he knows where she's going to be. Now, you don't know that he's never going to, he's going to have so much trouble finding her time and again. But you're left with a little hope there. And then that kind of, in a way, gets dashed when he says, I'll never see her again. But obviously, you don't know if that's definite or not. It's just, I'm remembering back to my first read through and where this put me in that place. And I remember there's some hope there, because he has this intense love interest, you feel like it's not going to just go away, right?
Well, what's interesting is you get this introduction to Denna, and he doesn't remark on it. It's not like he goes to an interlude and brings her up. It's just like, she was there and I hung out with her. Same way as he introduces Rowan and his wife and all the people. Like, he just introduces her without any kind of big preamble. But then before he introduces her the next time, there's a massive preamble.
I thought
he stops the story and is like, and remember, there's a girl, and I'm gonna get to her, and then he goes back in the story, and then when he brings her up again, then he can't get the words right. He's trying to describe her, so he's multiple times. The second time he runs into Denna, he makes a huge to do about it, but this time he doesn't at all.
I thought he did that in the first few chapters. He didn't.
Not about this. Like, we don't know this is the girl. At this point in the story, if you're reading this for the first time, you do not know this is the girl.
All right. But he has a whole... Yeah, all right.
And you don't... you might be able to guess it, but because he makes no to-do about it... that's why I think he makes no to-do about it, is because Rothfuss doesn't want to fucking give it away.
Yeah.
Because he's going to make a huge deal out of it. But if you're not just taking it as Rothfuss wrote it that way for a reason... then the other thing to think about is, it's possible that Denna's different in this meeting versus the next meeting. There's something different about her. And it seems like there's something different about her. That's pretty much it for me on this chapter. I don't have anything else that I need to bring up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's all for me as well.
Okay, then if you guys are ready, chapter 36 is called Less Talents. Now, Kvothe has arrived at the university, and he goes immediately to the archives. And when he gets there, the clerk at the front desk denies him entry and tells him he better get his ass over to the Hollows for admissions because they're going to close shortly. So Kvothe does go there, and he is questioned by the masters for his admissions. He has good answers. We find out that he did some eavesdropping to get those answers. And he ends up dazzling the masters, and they end up paying him 3 talents to come to school at the university, and Kvothe's well on his way at that point.
Yeah, so one of the cool parts that I found right off the bat was he's like the archives held answers, and I had many questions. First and foremost, I wanted to know the truth about the Chandrian and the Emir. I needed to know how much of Scarpy's story was the truth. Which we talk about mirroring things constantly, and Kvothe and who he mirrors and all that kind of stuff. That mirrors our podcast very fucking nicely, as we want to know how much of Scarpy's story is true, and we want to know what's the fucking deal with the Chandrian and Emir, and that's the biggest questions that we have. Is he sums them up very nicely in that opening part to this chapter.
Yeah, it's what motivates him in life, right? I mean, this is his purpose. Yeah, this chapter's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, I like the that he goes directly to the archives, and it's the whole reason why he ever wants to go to the university from a young age. We know Kvothe wants answers. Even before his parents are killed, he's got all these questions from his childhood that he wants answers, and he's always dreamed about the archives and the university having the answers. It's another point where Rothfuss is true to life, where, if you're someone who is hungry for knowledge and you can kind of envision that place where you can get all the answers you ever needed. I guess we don't really have that these days because we have the internet at our fingertips. Yeah. But
it's a cool image. It's this place to get all the answers that you could ever think of, right? Just endless amounts of books. What's these tens of thousands or something? I don't remember exactly how he puts it, but there's a certain way that he puts it.
It's more books than you could read in a lifetime. It's way more than tens of thousands. It's got to be hundreds of thousands.
The interesting thing, the really, really interesting thing that jumps out at me, he twice likens the archives to Greystones.
Yes.
Twice. At least right here. So
Some
again...
great Greystone over the trees to the west, yeah. So is it a Greystone? Is it
what's he
just
say about the
resemble it,
doors?
or is it actually a Greystone? Well, there's one other part too beyond that, like beyond it looking like a Greystone. The other part was, as far as architecture was, it was one of those ancient mammoth pieces of architecture scattered throughout the world, so old and solidly built that they have become part of the landscape, not a soul wondering who built them or why. It's talking about the big bridge he crosses, which makes me think that's going all the way back to the Creation Wars. And it's one of the reasons I think, like, Ari with the underground city that she's in, I think that this might be the twin cities of Morella and Marilla.
I was thinking of Buzz Killington. Like, who wants to hear a story about a bridge?
Yeah.
I thought we were going to go into that.
That's a Family Guy reference for those who don't know.
Yeah. But
Buzz Killington.
But yeah, the way he puts it is really great, where it's part of the landscape. People don't even ask about why it's there and who built it anymore, because it's so old and just part of the world.
That's gotta be pretty fucking old, where they don't even know where it came from. It's just, they look at it as just part of the landscape. It's not maintained. It's built and it's there, and it's just, that's what it is. And it's very nice too, it seems. It's not wide enough for a couple wagons, and it's it's been around for a long, long fucking time. So makes me think that's some shit, some powerful magic created.
Yeah, it's like the pyramids, but without but with the added usage.
Yeah, and it's also the place where Loden, when Kvothe is dipping out, he's like, "Hey, come sit up here with me," and he's like, "This is a good place to, look for the name of the wind." And like, there's something to it. It's an old piece of architecture. I think it lends some credence to that. This is one of those old where these old cities were back in the day that were destroyed by the Chandrian.
So that ties very nicely into, within the same paragraph, the archives, right?
Yeah.
And then again, hinting the Greystones and how it appears like a giant Greystone, like this big, just immense Greystone, which again, that always plays into that thing in my mind where it's a channel. It's the, it's a channel into this other, into knowledge, into just this other place, this sleeping mind, this whatever it is, the Fae. It's I don't know how to describe it exactly, but keep grasping at it.
It's kind of like your gut instinct, but like all encompassing.
Yeah,
like you have like a gut instinct, but it's completely envelops you, and everything is just your gut. You're not thinking about things anymore. You're just kind of reacting and doing.
He does such a great job of helping us to see it with Loden, because he runs around like a child doing ridiculous things, but he's the most powerful and most in tune with this, right? So it's as if everybody else is putting on airs just to be civilized. The more civilized you are, the less you are in touch with the sleeping mind. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but I'm trying. I'm trying to understand it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your subconscious, your things that you're not actively thinking of, your subconscious, your gut instinct. It's that kind of aspect.
Your chi.
So did you guys say that there's two separate waystones that they talk about?
No, they describe the archives like a giant waystone.
I'm saying he says it twice within 2 pages. He compares the archives to waystones. Yeah, to a massive greystone.
Another just kind of cool world building part is when he describes all the buildings that are built up around the university. like the apothecaries, the binders, the booksellers, the brothels, all the bars, which makes perfect sense around a college town. That you got all these fucking taverns surrounded by a college town. So it's just a little cool part of just world building that he describes, why it's different than other cities.
Yeah,
and it's like, college towns they're in our world, they're different.
Yeah, it's great. I love the no sympathy sign on a bar.
Yeah.
That's great, man. I like it's I mean, super inside nerd baseball for us, but somebody out there that loves these books has a bar that has no sympathy.
I hope so.
What I always think of is
and
like, you're at Michigan University and around there, no Ohio State hats.
Well, yeah, well, all right.
Something like along those lines. But, obviously it's different, but in that similar vein of like, hey, keep that shit on your side of town.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, that guy
we don't play with that here.
That guy better have a sword hanging up that says folly underneath it, too.
Yeah. You know what it actually made me think of? It made me think of insurance above the bar at Shallows. But yeah, anyway, I like it. I like the no sympathy sign. I like that world building. It's very. He does a very good job of also explaining the campus, the different buildings, how they've shown sort of the history.
Yeah, and then when he goes up to the actual archives, then we get the saying on the door, the Vorfelin Renata Mori. It says, I didn't recognize the language. It wasn't Siru, maybe Yiddish or Temic. Yet another question I needed answers for. Well, we get a pretty solid guess. Will's in book 2. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it's in book 2. It's when he gets admitted back to the archives again, and after he's been out of it for almost a year. And then when he's walking up with Will, he has him stop. He gets a little nervous, and then he asks Will what it means, and says, Will glanced up, says, the desire for knowledge shapes a man, or something close to that. So, desire for knowledge shapes a man, or shapers desire knowledge, or shapers create knowledge. I think it's something to do with shaping and knowledge.
It goes along with Lanray trying to find out some forbidden knowledge.
Yeah, shapers desire knowledge is could be in a similar vein. I don't know what the significance of it is at this point. It's impossible to know, but that's a basic gist of what it means. Then we get the introduction of Willem. I love that fucking character. He's a great character throughout the books. He's more of... I relate more with him, and is like when Kvothe and Sim and Will are hanging out, I relate much more with Will than Sim or Kvothe. He's especially with their reactions towards women.
Yeah, he's a bit aloof, seems. And he's I don't know, I like him as well. He's very much more direct. Yeah.
I hate him. He reminds me of Dan. And
yeah.
No, but he's the clerk at the is that right? At the library?
Yeah, he's one of the scrivs. Yeah, 100%. That's Willem. That's our first introduction to him. And then we get into his introduction to the masters. And so just kind of give like a rundown of all the masters. We got, the master alchemist, who's alchemy and chemistry. That's Mandrag, Master Mandrag. We got the archivist, who's in charge of the archives and teaches history. That's Master Lauren. Got master arithmetician, it's mathematics, geometry. That's Brandor. Got master artificer, which is Kilvin. It's teaching artificery, silgudry, metallurgy, that kind of stuff. Master linguist is the chancellor, Arthur Hemme. It's language, poetry. Master namer, it's obviously a Loden. It's teaching naming. Master Physiker is Arwell. He's teaching medicine, herbology, anatomy, physiognomy. Master Rhetorician, which I fucking despise that he's the rhetorician, the logic man, the rhetoric and philosophy, is Master Jason Hemme, because I love philosophy and I love logic and the study of logic and that kind of things. I love those shit. That's the stuff I love to dive into, just in my free time. And it's this fucking douchebag, the worst fucking dude, one of the worst douchebags in the book, is in charge of one of my favorite subjects. And then last but not least is Elxadal, Master Sympathist, in charge of sympathy. And his shit is fucking dope. His classes are my favorite classes.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. Kilda, Elxadal, Loden, they're all great. The one thing I wanted to mention before we get too far is the introduction where he comes in is great, because he stands at the edge of the light and they're all up above him. They're all looking down on him. Every time I see this room, I see it the way that I see it in this scene, where there's light, but the room is dark. The masters are looking down. It's very foreboding. It's very intimidating to be in Kvothe's position. Not that he's always intimidated, but it's an intimidating posture to be in, where he has to stand on the horns, as they call it, with the crescent table. But it's great. I mean, he sets the scene so well.
Yeah, and it's really well done.
And it's another one of these things. I feel like a broken record here, but this true to life stuff where, in a situation like this, if you can imagine being a 16-year-old kid and a spotlight beating down on you, and 10 guys who are, so much further along in their life process, and they're just looking down on you and questioning you,
and deciding your fate.
Bullets. Yeah, absolutely. And then the only thing that's not true to life to me is that him is the only one who's a dickhead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but as far as
it's so great though, man, because he is a fucking asshole, but everyone else knows he is. You know what I mean? It's not just that he's an asshole. The Chancellor checks him all throughout this chapter.
Yeah.
He gets checked by everybody else around him because he's a fucking asshole.
Brandor fucking follows him around like a little fucking puppy, though. I don't understand their relationship, why he's fucking down for the cause.
What I see with both of them is this is the politics involved in academia. This is when a piece of shit like Ambrose gets embedded into academia for whatever reason. He's a tenured professor and they're never going to get rid of him. And for whatever reason, Brandor's in the same vein. And these two little leech pieces of shit, these are the last type of people you want educating in a position of education. It's the same reason why you don't want certain people as cops. I mean, they're fighting. It's the antithesis of what you want in that position.
Yeah, Brandor is not so much a douchebag. He's just a fucking lickspittle. He's just a follower, like a fucking pussy. I don't understand his relationship with him, other than, I can understand that there are lickspittles in the world, but I don't understand why he's fucking hitched his wagon to that douchebag star. But he has.
I feel like I cut you off though, Fitz.
Yeah, I forget what it was. I was going to speak about probably. I think I was going to speak to Dan's hatred for him, and just kind of rebut it that that guys who are like that, rhetoric, logic, philosophy, debate, they tend to be dickheads. They tend to be naysayers, and so I mean, him's it's not so much logic, because I'm in the same vein as you are as far as that goes, but
he's not. The difference is like he's the teacher of philosophy and argumentation and that kind of thing, but he's not logical. He's an emotional little bitch.
Yeah. Yep.
Again, that's what I was saying earlier. He's like the antithesis of the person you would want teaching this. He's
Yeah.
not open-minded, man. He browbeats everybody.
He doesn't even seem good at what he does.
But if you ever met somebody,
he's so emotional.
But have you ever met somebody who doesn't who knows philosophy teachings, but they don't understand philosophy? Like they know about all great philosophers and their philosophies, and they're just total douchebags because that's what I've met guys who study philosophy and they have no idea what it means to have logic and reason and to understand what these philosophers were trying to do in their time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I obviously it's the same in any field. There's going to be arrogant, idiots, but what you don't find is a lot of people who are well versed in philosophy and argumentation that are also so completely ruled by their emotions. They can usually pull it back when it's time to argue and shit, and he just does not have that.
Yeah, very strange.
It's out of fucking place.
It's a very strange dichotomy.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, and I don't want to play devil's advocate too much, but someone who's given to debate and can be a bit of a naysayer. That's all I'm saying, and that's what he is. He's a douchebag in that way. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's the last person you'd want. It's the bad qualities of a debater, of a philosopher. It's all the bad qualities that hubris that someone like that might have in one
He's
character.
A little
so it's great.
Petty fucking tyrant.
It's great.
Fucking piece of shit.
And again, look what it does to you, Dan. He does such a good job.
I hate him.
Yep, he does a very good job painting him as a.
Well, it's really interesting too because there are points where Elxadal and Kelvin especially play the role of a great teacher.
Yeah,
and reading it where you're like, "What, dude? That is something that a good teacher should do right now. That's great." Like there's points like that. And him is just always the antithesis, man. He's just always in the way. He's just such.
But his mission in life is to ruin fucking Kvothe. But he does not seem like he gives a. I mean, look, obviously there's teachers like that, but this guy is like all the bad teachers and all the bad qualities wrapped up into one fucking giant douche.
I think Rothfuss had them. And he wrapped them all up into him.
I had him.
And yeah, exactly. And we're about to have, in the next episode, a phenomenal chapter where Hemme gets his. So,
hey, Tim, you mentioned Kelvin and Elxadal, Elodin and Arwell all have those great teacher moments where you're like, man, these guys. Yeah, they're all very. You wish you had a teacher that was good like that. That's what the idealistic teacher should be.
Yeah, the guiding.
Yeah, the only part that's a little unrealistic is like how many of them are good teachers.
Yeah.
Like that is not.
It's very unfortunate,
realistic to the real world.
Yeah,
most of the time you're like 1 out of 10 max.
Well, this is again. This lends more gravity and
These are the best of the best.
Yeah, this is the elite of the elite, and he's at the right place.
And not just that they're teachers, but they're the masters of each department. I'm sure there's other teachers in these departments.
Yeah, they got people that are below them, but they're like kind of student teachers, more what that role is. But one of the parts that I always crack up in my own head is when he's like the arcanist I learned from was named Aventhy, sir, but he never gave me a letter of introduction. Might I tell you myself? I always picture the masters being like, who? Like, no clue who Aventhy is. Like, Aventhy? The fuck is an Aventhy? It's not even a fucking name. There's nobody named Aventhy. There's nobody here. No one came through here named Aventhy. Like, they don't make any kind of acknowledgement that they know who he is.
Nobody.
You assume that they do, but I for whatever reason, I like to picture in my head that they have no fucking clue who he's talking about, and they think he's just a completely made up person, and then Aventhy was like this no-name terrible student that just somehow slinked his way into becoming an arcanist.
Well, they accept it though, and Lauren even says, "Hey, I'm headed to Tarbean, so I'm going to find this book." And they give him admissions without even without even that much.
Well, I like how Dan instinctively takes Hemme's side.
Yeah. Yeah.
The boy's obviously lying. I have important matters to attend to this afternoon. Douche.
Yeah, you get a little bit of their personalities, the different teachers through their questioning, and you get the great stuff with Kelvin with his obsession with the ever burning lamp.
Oh yeah.
And I don't have. You also get what's his name, Master Lauren, bringing up the downfall of the Aturan Empire, which is where I brought up like Lord Nalto,
Mm-hmm.
where that's where Nalt came from. They bring that up in this chapter, and I do think that there's something more to Master Lauren more than the rest of them. I think Master Lauren could possibly be a member of the Amir. That he's pruning the library of the books of the Amir and the Chandrian. Like, Kvothe can't find anything there. So I think if the Amir, if you're going to put a position in, someone in a position of power, the guy running the library would be premium place. Take out all mentions, keep your name hidden. We got the mysterious guy that's going around collecting books for him that Kvothe meets.
Hey, can I stop you real quick, Dan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Along those lines, after the interview, Lauren immediately goes up to Kvothe and says, "Hey, did you say your dad's name is Arladin?" And then he says, "Arladin the Bard." Like he knows something that Kvothe doesn't know, or he knows something about Kvothe's dad already.
Yeah.
Yes, I got a little nugget for you guys on that one, but the other just to finish my point though, another thing about Lauren that leads me to believe he might be part of the Amir beyond the pruning. He's got guys out collecting books for him that might be pruning other libraries around the world. When Kvothe is reading the Duke of Gibeah's book, the guy that they learned much of the medical knowledge that they have in this world is from the Duke of Gibeah. They got one of his original copies in this library. Kvothe is reading it, and then he sees on the outer edges of the pages is the motto of the Amir, like for the greater good. And it's written in Tema or Temic or one of those languages. This is when Kvothe was shouting down these guys that kept talking loud in the library. And Master Lauren comes in and he steps in and seemingly he's going in there to kick him out for talking loud. But he also takes that fucking book away from him when Kvothe is like going through his theory with Sem that I think the Amir still exist. I think this proves it. I think they're in hiding. Then Master Lauren shows up, takes that fucking book from him immediately. So I think there's a case to be made that Master Lauren is
Amir.
Amir, yes.
That's
really interesting. I definitely had made that connection. That seems plausible.
Now to go with what Fitz was saying, I have a couple more things on the chapter to mention, but to wrap up Lauren's part, he reacts to the knowledge that Arladin is Kvothe's father. Well, Rothfuss has, this is not something you would read about. This is just something Rothfuss has said that I've come across. So someone asked him, how does Lauren know about Arladin? And Rothfuss answered, he said, Arladin had a productive career as a songwriter, not to mention that he had a fairly high-profile gig as the lead trooper in Greyfowl's Men. As such, he wrote a lot of songs, many of which were recorded and attributed to him, but there are a lot of songs in the archives that have been collected and aren't attributed to anyone. Lauren was going to ask Kvothe for his assistance cataloging these before Kvothe had his hissy fit at the end of chapter 36. That's a little secret nobody knew before. See, I'm not a total a-hole about keeping things to myself.
Huh.
So we find out why he was approaching Kvothe about Arladin was because he wanted him to try to catalog some songs that are not attributed to anybody. He was going to try to fucking pin out who sang them.
So what do they use 8-track?
Yes. Yeah, 8-track and floppy disk for some reason.
Okay.
Floppy disk.
Yeah.
You couldn't get any music on a floppy disk.
They do it. Some magic, man. It's magical.
Oh, it's sympathy. Floppy disk, sympathy
Yeah.
floppy disks.
It's Sigildry.
Hey,
Yeah.
Speaking of Sigildry, I wanted to go back to Kilvin asking Kvothe how to make a lamp. I found that to be very funny.
Yeah.
And it seems like
Not like this.
He asked Kvothe, and it seems like all the other masters are like, oh, god damn it. He's like,
He just seems like
it's my question. I can ask him whatever I want.
Yeah, I love
He
it.
seems like this beast of a man that just could like crush anybody with his bare hands, and he's just got this gruff, hard personality, very deadpan sense of humor, but loves like a little bit of fire in the belly. Yeah,
Like,
I love fucking Kilvin.
So that little scene, it's almost like Kilvin senses Kvothe's genius,
Well,
and so he's trying to figure it
He
out.
certainly was testing
And so
it.
then
Yeah, he was,
when he
was
can't
at
figure it
least
out, he's like-
testing it.
When he can't figure it out on the spot, he's like, "We'll talk later."
what I like about it so much is he's giving good responses to these questions. So then we start recognizing, or he starts saying, "Oh, they didn't ask anybody else this." So then they start testing him because they're like, "All right, he knows some shit. Let's see how far we can push him." So that's why like Kilvin will come up with a question like that. It
Yeah,
happens.
and Kilvin even mentions later on, like the first guest, like the lithium salt. He was like, that was that gas impressed me. He's like, it took me like 11 years to before I came up with that, and that was one of his most successful fucking lamps.
Nice.
Yeah. Not make it glow, but to make it stay on fire forever.
Ever burning.
It's such a great chapter, man, because you're getting little idiosyncrasies about the individual masters. You're getting a depth of understanding of the depth of knowledge that Kvothe has, his ability to think on his feet, his ability to always maintain that edge, which is, he fucking cheats. He's shrewd. He's willing to cheat, because he's smart enough to figure out a way to be able to do it, and he's desperate, and he's going to do what he has to do. He takes risks.
Yeah, he beats the system.
Yeah, but there's so much. I mean, he's resourceful throughout, but also plays a little bit of how the university is politicized, in that you just reading him, you're like, this guy should not be in this position. Clearly, he should, but somehow he's in this position. We also get more history, like you said, about the Emir, about the Aturian Empire. But yeah, the first thing we were talking about, that I started talking about, that led me into this, was it's that buildup of they're starting to respect what he knows, so then they just start throwing these other questions at him, which kind of catch him off guard.
Yeah, and then we also, this is where we get Master Elodin, our first introduction. He's one of my favorite characters in both books.
Yeah.
And you get he's at least, a dozen years younger than the youngest of the other 9 chancellors, the other 8. So there's 9 of them total. But he's like, I felt Master Elodin look at me. I actually felt it. I suppressed a shiver. So
I caught that too.
Yeah, you get that sense of like, Elodin is extremely powerful, and and like we talked about just earlier in this episode, like it seems like he's able to read him like a book.
Yeah, it's that Namer thing where he can just see everything about Kvothe just by looking at him.
It's interesting too, because the subtlety is when he first speaks, he had an accent that I couldn't quite place, or perhaps it was his voice held a certain resonance. When he spoke, everyone at the desk stirred slightly, then grew still, like leaves touched by the wind. So
that's interesting.
There's like
I didn't pick up on that.
There's like a feeling in the room. You can there's like it embodies everyone. And what Dan was talking about earlier, it's so well put where they describe him, how his mannerisms or, how he acts. One moment watching something intently, the next minute bored and letting his attention wander among the high beams of the ceiling above. He was almost like a child who had been forced to sit down with adults.
Hey, Tim, you said that it reads Leaves Touched by the Wind, which I'll just throw out that was, I believe, one of the first things that Kvothe played on his lute after he quit playing songs.
Yeah. When turning a leaf, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, there's definitely something to Elodin. Obviously, we know through going through the books, he's powerful. And the other masters seem to sense it. But then also, after Elodin asks him his questions, asks him, like, how many fingers am I holding him up? He asked him these silly questions, but he was digging for information that he wanted to know for some reason. But after he asks these questions, he goes, the Chancellor jumps in and he's like, that seems to cover most of academia, the Chancellor said, almost to himself. I had the impression that something had unsettled him, but he was too composed for me to tell exactly what. So I'm like, obviously, what unsettled him? Does he see something in Kvothe based on his answers? Maybe the questions that Elodin asked him and something about his answers unsettled the Chancellor? Or is it because Elodin participated and took an interest in Kvothe, is that what unsettles him? Knowing Elodin and what they locked him in the rookery, and so the fact that Elodin, maybe he doesn't take an interest in students, and now that to see him take an interest in Kvothe like that unsettles him. Obviously, we don't have any clarity to it, but it is something that I'm curious what unsettled him exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. He does a really interesting job with Elodin, because there are these things that happen around him. It's the way people act around him. The other masters, the way they act around him. They don't treat him like they kind of laugh at him at times.
Treat him like he's crazy, but also that he's dangerous and not to be trifled with.
Yeah, because they have to respect the fact.
Smarter than him.
And then you come to learn over time, like they respect the fact that this dude has access to knowledge and abilities that none of them have.
Yeah.
And
that naming is deep.
What's that?
I said that just the naming side of it. He's a great namer, and when you can name things, it's a sixth sense or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
They have obviously some sort of fear of him. They locked him in the rookery and he escaped, and there was nothing they could do about it. There is some sense that he's got some powers that they don't fully have. They can't even grasp. Like they have to respect him. They have to appreciate, how powerful he is.
Oh, I wanted to go back for a second. When he's talking about he was eavesdropping and he heard about how high the students' tuitions were set, and the lowest was like for whatever. He says it would be easier for me to get a piece of the moon than that much money.
Yep, they bring it up again, Tim. You're right. He's dropping hints there about Kvothe and Ajax.
Yeah, there's a lot of mentions of the moon. It's tough to know what to make of it, but there's a lot of mentions of the moon with Hemme, with Denna, with Ari, the moon, with Ajax stealing the moon. There's something to it. It's just we're missing a massive piece of the puzzle to be able to figure out what aspect of it is important.
It's one of those things that can be read multiple ways, because first read through I'm like, it's just an idiom. It's something that they in this world, it's something they say. And it's something that people probably said in our world for a while. You don't hear it too much these days, but It's a Wonderful Life. It fits. The line, right?
I'm on it. Yeah.
It's going to last till the moon.
No, and it wouldn't have.
Dan doesn't know the line. It's outside of his expertise.
No, I'm not 100 years old watching outdated movies that weren't even good when they came out.
Outdated. Only new. Only the newest of the new are quality.
Yeah. Yeah, the craft of acting has massively improved from Fred Astaire and Humphrey Bogart and those fucking nerds.
Nerds.
Overacting.
Nerds.
They were like trying to do plays on camera. It's just terrible. There's nothing good about it. Anybody who likes old movies
Dan only likes
just has
reality
terrible
TV.
taste, and they shouldn't express their opinions on movies.
We're really cutting our audience. I mean, already the cloak wearers, they tuned out a while ago.
You wear a cloak,
75%
out
of
of here.
them.
You like old movies? Get it moving. We're not for you.
No,
This ain't
that's
for-
not
this
true.
ain't for-
Dan.
That's not
this
true
ain't
because I
for
like
you,
old
folks.
movies. I watch TCM all the time. So
I like
Well, don't
the
listen to
overacting.
me then. Mute my part of the conversation. You're not allowed to hear what I say if you like cloaks and old movies.
I think we do need to recognize that Fitz says he likes overacting.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
a little
yeah,
I'm a little numb.
Who does
and
not like
I don't pick
overacting?
up a lot of subtle cues, so that overacting. Jim Carrey, one of my favorite fucking actors, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think he's doing a character now. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I really like. I mean, some of the best parts you guys already talked about, but when Kilvin, when he's like, I love this dude. He's just
Yeah.
But to that effect, Kvothe, this is great, man, because he's like, they ask, is there anything you'd like to say? Most students don't say anything, and I'm like, that's retarded. This is your chance.
Yeah.
Dazzle dazzle these guys, and he gives a great speech. He just masters it. It's fantastic, man. So great.
And the basis of that speech is, give me free tuition and 3 talents so I can get some books
What?
and
Not
whatnot.
even pay me to come
Well,
here.
what's
Pay me 3 talents to go to your school.
well, think about it though. For his character, man, he puts it out there, man. He lets himself be vulnerable. I mean, he talks about sleeping in alleys and stables. Like, he'll do what it takes. He's like, I'll do what it takes, but this is how I've lived. I have 2 jots or something. It's like, I'm not going to be able to afford to do this. But if you pay for me, I can. It's so great. What is it?
Which is great because, like, we know, like, after they pay him this, like, like, basically 2 days later, he's up on fucking charges and, for attacking one of the masters. And so it's like, God damn it, dude, we just paid you 3 talents to come here and you're already fucking starting shit right off the fucking bat.
And
yeah, it's fucking great.
So we were talking about, you were talking about the deadpan thing. It's so great what he does, where the confusion of his tuition shall be set at the rate of less 3 talents, and where Kvothe just goes down this road of like, fuck you guys, fuck this, like, I just, it, like, it's so great to read that. It's just such a great way to write that on Rothfuss' part. It's just fantastic.
When I
He
read
loses
it,
me at the end, though, because right after that part's great. His, like, go fuck yourself attitude. But then when he finds out that they paid him 3 talents, he sits down on the ground and starts crying again.
again.
And it's like, dude, enough with the crying, you fucking baby. Stop crying all the time.
When I read it, I first read it and I'm like, less 3 talents. So that means that but then he gets all pissed off and I'm like, oh, I must have read that wrong.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So you're reading it and you're like, oh, okay, well, so what is he going to do? But you're still just going, and it's just playing in the back of your mind, And then it's like Artelet in the bar, and you're like, whoa, maybe he'll find something out here. Oh, no, he's too pissed to find anything out, so I guess no, we're not going to find anything out about his dad.
Yeah, not that.
Because he's just too mad. And then you just keep going, and you're like, oh. And then, yeah, he weeps, and then you're like, yeah, he's a little baby.
Sissy. Sissy.
I guess I didn't have to double down on that because it's understandable, but Dan's just.
It is not understandable. Never cry. Never show weakness. Especially if you want to be a hero and you're going to be weak all the time. You can't be a hero and be weak. You can imagine the Punisher fucking breaking down and just bawling all the time because someone gave him money and he cries over it. Nah, can't be a sissy like that. Man up, dude. Man up, Kvothe.
Kvothe. as in jest as you say all these things, Kvothe does
No, I'm
have
dead
a
serious.
lot
I'm
of
not in
emotions.
Yeah.
He does get very emotional over and over again.
Yeah, he's got a
You
lot of
guys are
him
going
in
to
him.
pay my tuition.
Emotions ruin him.
So I was going to, I know you guys talked about it, but I was going to point it out because Fitz asked last time about what happened to the Amir, which you asked Dan directly. Do we know? It is told here on when he's talking about Lord Nalto, but he kind of goes into more detail about, and he's speculating because it's a complicated thing, but he does
The fall of the Aeturn Empire.
Yeah, and he does say that Nalto denounced the Order Amir, who were a large part of the strength of the Aetur. So yeah, I mean, it kind of gives the gives a bit of it to us there.
Tells the who, we don't get the why.
Yeah, I guess
So.
that's true, yeah.
I also found that interesting. Is there no more that we learn about that? There is.
Yeah,
more.
we'll get more.
Like, but I'll just
in
throw
the second
this in
book when he meets Puppet and stuff. Like, there's a bet between him and Will on who actually disbanded it. Was it the church or was it the Emperor? And so there's a bet between Will and him, and that's where Kvothe gets introduced to Puppet, and so they talk about it a bit there. But still, it's not 100% clear. Period.
But
I was gonna point out that the other things that he mentioned was that they were fighting battles on multiple fronts, but I don't know about that. But that he, to some extent, had disenfranchised the Adim.
Pissed him off.
Yeah.
He antagonized him.
Okay.
Well, in this chapter is
I don't know anything else about it though.
Massive on world building. I mean, huge. So even just following after what we were just mentioning, they also debased their currency, undercut the universality of the Iron Law, and antagonized the Adim. So debase the currency. So we have that, right? Inflation.
Yeah.
Undercut the universality of the Iron Law. So what? That's like defederalized. I mean, I don't know.
Or destroyed destroyed the Constitution, to put it in our terms. It sounds like it's the law of the land, and they just started saying, screw it.
Yeah, that's how I kind of take it, that they were running afoul of their own laws and were just doing what they wanted and not abiding by the laws that they had laid down.
Right.
I mean, so there's that. So we get the world building of history, but then we also, I mean, there's so much, man, because we get some information about how sympathy works, their knowledge of the bones and the muscles of the hand. So like how much where they're at in terms of understanding of anatomy. There's a lot. I mean, we even get like medicine. We get just all these different pieces of
chemistry,
what's understood. Yeah, what's understood in the world, different languages. I mean, it's loaded. This chapter is just so rich with how this world is built, what the knowledge is, the level of knowledge. It's very rich.
Well, it's another one of these huge information dumps that Rothfuss does a good job of making so interesting.
Yes, it's done in such a great way because there's so much on the line for Kvothe. His entire life is built up to this moment. Oh man, yeah, it's so well done, man. I don't know what else to say about it. In terms of, I can't overstate. It's just a culmination of so many things, and at the same time, like you said, a big delivery of information to us, which we need. We need to keep moving throughout the story and to understand how the world works, and to understand how the university works. And has a story about a bridge.
Yeah, that's the most
Buzz
important
Killington to wrap it all up for you guys.
Yeah, way to end on a fucking sour note. Fucking just really fucking take us down on a low note.
I would like to hear a story about a bridge.
Normally we end on a high note and he just like fucking fucking
I like
kneecaps
how
us right off at the end.
Fits on cue with the. Jeez. It's good. It's good. Well, I don't have a lot else in terms of that chapter. I mean, there's so many things that you could pick and piece out that's so telling and everything else. But I'm sure Dan wants to make some more comments about Denna being a prostitute, or maybe
how much he hates old movies,
slanderize black and white movies, and any actor that was alive more than 30 years ago.
You sound like a real him right now.
Get y'all hemmed up.
Little emotional baby, because I don't like your stupid movies.
Get y'all hemmed up.
Fucking bring some logical arguments to your stupid emotions. Fucking him.
It's pretty funny that 2 episodes in a row we do have It's a Wonderful Life references. Yeah. I didn't think it would be necessary, information for you to know to really delve in further into
as if it was some strange coincidence that Tim brought up It's a Wonderful Life twice in a row. It's like, hey, Fitz, right? You know the reference.
Well, I don't remember the reference now that we use this episode. I don't.
This guy's like shoving this movie down our throats, and it's like, oh, it's weird that this got brought up. Like, no, you're shoving it down our fucking throat. What are you talking about?
Okay, that's a fair point.
It's not weird.
That's a fair point.
You forced it in.
It's a fair.
It wasn't in. There was no reason to bring it up. You just like shoved it down our throat. Like, eat it.
It's a fair point that I brought it up. And then I'm like, well, that's weird. How's it coming up? Over and over again. Keeps coming up.
Hey, Dan, what do we have coming up in the following chapters?
Next time we will get into the great Hemme chapter, where Hemme gets the hot foot. We get to meet Sim, we get to meet Manette, we get to meet Savoy. Better introduction of Willem. We get some good stuff next time. Love the Hemme chapter. Can't wait to see that fucking douche get his comeuppance for the first time.
Yeah, it's great. Right. We learn a lot about sympathy.
Good stuff. Okay, killers, get some sleep and come back with us next time refreshed and ready to go. We'll be ready with some more action for you. Have a good night.
All right, see ya.
Yeah, right on.